This program is brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the City of Eau Claire. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9.
The Eau Claire City Council meeting will now come to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Anderson.
Here.
Beaton. Berge.
Here.
Christofferson.
Here.
Emmanuel.
Here.
Gregert.
Here.
Klinkhammer. Lohr.
Here.
Weld.
Here.
Worthman.
And good evening and welcome to our Monday, February 24th meeting of the Eau Claire City Council. I appreciate all of you joining us here this evening, and hopefully all had a chance to enjoy the beautiful day. During our Monday meetings, the Eau Claire City Council conducts public hearings, listening sessions, and public discussion where residents in our community are invited and encouraged to ask questions and weigh in on important decisions we will be making in our legislative session, either here tomorrow at 4 p.m. in these chambers or in coming weeks and months ahead. We want to thank Valley Media Works for live streaming this proceeding. To those of you not able to join us in person, to watch, please visit valleymediaworks.org or visit channel 994 on Spectrum Cable. It is also simulcast at 101.9 FM. And if you are looking for past meetings, you can find those on YouTube under the Chippewa Valley Media Works channel. If you plan to address the council this evening, I will briefly review the protocol. Once an agenda item is introduced, staff will present the item, and following the presentation, the council may have questions to clarify the issue. We will then open the item for public input. Once the item is open for comment, please come forward one at a time. When you approach, please begin by announcing your name and your address, and then begin sharing your comments. We welcome you to speak for 5 minutes. You will see 3 lights on the podium. The first light is green, which will illuminate when you begin speaking. It'll then turn yellow when you have 1 minute remaining, and then it'll start to blink red when I'll politely ask you to wrap up your comments. Sometimes council members will ask you follow-up questions. Sometimes council members will ask you follow-up questions, so please give us a moment before leaving the podium. If you wish to speak on an item that is not listed on the agenda, you may do so during the public comment period at the end of the meeting. If you haven't done so yet, there is a sign-up sheet on the desk at the back of the room. Lastly, if you're not comfortable speaking at the podium, you can fill out a comment form at that same table, and those comments are then distributed to council members ahead of our legislative meeting tomorrow night. As always, you can email or call us, and our contact information is on the city website or, again, on the table in the back. With that introduction, we'll get on to our first order of business. There are 2 items scheduled for public hearing on tonight's agenda. Agenda item number 1 is a public hearing on proposed street, utility, and sidewalk improvements on the following streets: Oxford Avenue to Platt Street and Maxon Street to Bellinger Street. Good evening, Mr. Solberg.
Good evening. Thank you. Sorry. So the first, or the only streets on the agenda for today, the first one is Oxford Avenue, beginning at Madison Street, going to the north to just shy of Platt Street. And the second is Maxon Street, which begins at Oxford Avenue and extends to the west to Bellinger Street. Oxford Avenue is a principal arterial. It's on the west side of Eau Claire, or on the near west side. Its pavement condition is on a scale of out of 100, 25 to 42. Currently, it's 36 feet wide, face-to-face of curb. It's kind of a blighted street. It's in tough shape. The utilities date back to 1891 for water main, sanitary sewer to the 1930s, and storm sewer to 1945. Oxford Avenue is the first of the routes and streets going into the Cannery District. So as such, this first section is, we viewed it as a gateway into the area with higher aesthetic streetscape. So we're proposing decorative pavers in the boulevard areas, similar to what we see in downtown. stamped and stained concrete crosswalks, bump outs, where we're able to get those for safer pedestrian crossings, and decorative street lighting, and even the trees, instead of a traditional tree vault for those, we're proposing silva-cells, which help filter some of the suspended solids and the impurities off of the street with a storm sewer, filtering them through the trees' roots to create healthier trees and also improve water quality in the Chippewa River. So what the project proposes to do is replace the existing utilities, all three of the utilities that the city has: water, sanitary sewer, and storm sewer, new concrete pavement, and new sidewalk and curb and gutter. Where there is not parking permitted, we will retain the 36 feet face-to-face cross-section for the street, and we are trying to introduce on-street parking in this area in conjunction with it being a more pedestrian-centric, downtown-type street. So the areas where we are able to have parking in on-street is 40 feet face-to-face. The second street is Maxon Street, and I'll go through both of those, the narratives, and then I'll go through the displays that we have. Secondly, Maxon Street is currently 23 feet wide, and it has no curb and gutter. It starts in the bottom picture. It starts here and it extends to the west. So there's Maxon Street. It has aged utilities. Water main was installed in 1910, sanitary sewer in 1946, and the storm sewer in 1974. We're proposing to reconstruct Maxon Street to an urban cross-section with curb and gutter, sidewalk. Currently there is no sidewalk for a large portion of that, and introduce some on-street parking where we're able to get that to help support some of the regrowth along Oxford Avenue. Both projects were presented to the city's bicycle and pedestrian advisory committee, and they weighed in on both projects and liked the designs as proposed to them. Going through the project in specifics, we start, this is Madison Street. We'll do our utility tie-ins. The existing pavement starts to get bad at about this location to the north. We're not proposing a lot of changes in this area because of the intersection and the volume of traffic we need to store for the left turn movements. And then as we proceed to the north, we have a safer bump out for a pedestrian crossing just north of the Quick Trip, and this is the Cameron Street right-of-way that was recently vacated. In this location here, there is a development that is currently underway. We have sidewalk on both sides and decorative pavers between the sidewalk and the curb and gutter. As we continue to go north, along where the brewing project is on the bottom of the screen and the children's theater is on the north of the screen, we have another bump out in this location for a pedestrian crossing. Maxon Street goes to the west, and we have our tree wells with decorative pavers and some on-street parking adjacent to the theater and the brewing project as well. We have a crosswalk only shown at one location. On the south side, this is a newly constructed driveway that was put in with the parking lot for the brewing project. So it precludes having a crosswalk line up with that, but we'll review that to see if there is any flexibility with size on that. But as far as shifting that, we had taken a question if we're able to shift that to get another crosswalk in here that would match this side, and that would put the driveway in line with a row of cars that park there. So at Maxon Street, we'll have there's a residential development here, a theater, and an enhanced crossing at one location being proposed. We stop construction just shy of Platt Street, and we match in with asphalt in this location, and then we have a layout for a roundabout in the future as development becomes known with north of Platt Street along Oxford Avenue. Again, going on Maxon Street, Bellinger Street is to the left, Oxford is just to the right by the Children's Museum. A new asphalt street, new utilities. Another feature that we're incorporating in with the project is working with Xcel Energy, and the overhead electric lines that you see on Oxford Avenue will be relocated, and we will not have those aerial facilities along Oxford, and they will be co-housed on an existing electrical line that goes up and down this alley. This alley, by the way, was one of the alleys previously approved earlier this year. So not only will the streets be new in this area, but we'll have new alleys when we're done with the construction. Here's just a close-up showing the pedestrian crossing at Maxon Street, just showing narrower crossing distances like you see along Barstow Street and Graham Avenue. An enhanced crossing at Maxim Street to get over and across to both sides of Oxford Avenue, and then ultimately to the Cannery Trail as connections are made to the Cannery Trail. And in the future, depending upon what development occurs to the north, we've laid out we have a preliminary concept with a roundabout laid out as a gateway similar in size to the roundabout on State Street at Lexington at the top of the hill. You could have a gateway or some kind of signature entrance to the northern part of the Cannery District in the center of this, but this will largely depend upon development that will be occurring north of Platt Street on both sides of Oxford Avenue. So for that reason, with the project that we're proposing today, we'll match our utilities in here, and when it comes time to do the intersection, we'll pick up where the concrete pavement ends and reconstruct the intersection and go west on Platt Street and north on Oxford Avenue. We did have an open house for the project on site at the Children's Theater a couple of weeks ago. We've been to the Redevelopment Authority a couple of times over the last few years, as recently as last week. The overall feedback that we've taken has been positive. The property owners for the brewing project and the Children's Theater and the Cannery Trail Apartments, I believe is the name for it, have reviewed the plans and are very supportive of it as well, in addition to BPAC. So we think it'll be a very nice project when it's done. Right now we're working with the property owners for the best time to construct it, and it's the earliest construction would begin early this summer and then complete early fall, and the latest construction would start right away next spring, and then it would wrap up in early summer. So we'll work with the property owners and work with the utilities, the private utilities that are there to make sure that they can get their facilities moved, and then we'll start our work. With that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions from council? Councilmember Greiger.
Yeah, thank you, President Weld. Mr. Solberg, I know we corresponded on a number of aspects of this via email today. I guess one of the points that was, I guess, the decision to go with on-street parking and more pedestrian focus rather than having bike lanes through here. So would you feel it would make sense to do share markings, to share the road symbols on the lanes instead of bike lanes?
It should hopefully have a feel like you have in Barstow Street. The reason we didn't propose sharrows with the original project is we have the Cannery Trail that runs parallel to it, only along the river. If you did have sharrows to heighten the on-street bicycle community, I think it would just be an alert for the motorists going through there. So I think they probably would fit with that. There isn't room without restricting parking to have the bike lanes. That was one thing that we looked at to see if we had an on-street bike system, and there just wasn't the opportunity, and I think the intersection at Madison Street would be very stressful traverse with a bicycle. So, it wouldn't be. The advantages of having sharrows is obviously it highlights the bicycling members on the street and puts that visual awareness. The downside is probably the maintenance costs in the future when you replace them 5 to 7 years down the road. But we did try to make this so when you're driving through there, you have more of a Barstow or Graham feel, and it's a little bit calmer and not quite your utilitarian route going through there. So hopefully it's welcoming for everybody.
Any other questions? Councilor Vice President Emmanuel.
Thank you, Council President Weld. Thank you, Mr. Solberg, and I had truly the pleasure to see a presentation similar last week at the RDA.
Yeah.
And you spent a little time talking about some of the red features that I'm wondering if you can highlight that, because I really thought that elevated not only the utility of the infrastructure, but also trying to create a connection with the culture and local businesses there.
Sure. We wanted to have, the physical layout of the street has been pretty well received, and the theme is throughout the downtown with the bump outs, but the features that go into it and the color schemes or themes that go with it, we wanted it to be unique to this area. So you have a very vibrant children's theater with a bright red brick, and then you have some grays with a brewing project that are the steel with it, and then you have darker brick with the brewing project. And then also you'll have colors with the apartment building that are there. So what we want to do is we can get samples of the bricks and we can look at those, but they don't look the same as when you're actually physically out on site. So when the project moves along, we'll have a mock-up of the actual bricks out there and then try to pick some that will include those buildings in with the overall streetscape. So it has kind of its own unique fit and feel with it. And then going along with it, I mean, there could be the opportunity for a sculpture tour, an art walk, as you go further in the Cannery District, that could add a little extra personality to it. So is that what you were looking for? Okay.
Any other questions from council? Councilmember Gregor.
Yeah, thank you, President Weld. Mr. Solberg, another issue that we talked about a bit was the Maxon Street section. And, as you mentioned, it doesn't have currently like any curb and gutter on it. So we're essentially adding sidewalks and we're adding kind of more of an urban feel to it. But obviously there's some constraints there that we're running into in the sense that there's a lot of, like most of that northern section of the sidewalk is back of curb. It's like right up against the street. So could you explain how that decision was made and also like what some of the restraints were?
So to start with, we have a standard right-of-way width through here, but when you drive through there, it doesn't look like it because the street is pretty narrow. There's no curb and gutter. On the north side with the sidewalk being on the back of curb, there are a number of trees, and the aerial flights are taken before the trees leaf out, so they don't stand out as prominently as you would hope. But there are a number of trees here, and this house is quite a bit higher than the street. So about 4 or 5 feet when you look, like if you get a good view of it on Google Earth. So with the number of large mature trees, and there's another tree that is in this location, the street is already being widened out in that area, but then to put the sidewalk out where it typically goes in a street with a boulevard, where the sidewalk is either on the right-of-way or it's a foot off of the right-of-way, it would take the trees that are along this area, plus this whole area that's a hill that we can grade into the back of curb. If we push the sidewalk back, we'd have a retaining wall like you see in the off of Birch Street and on the east side hill. So we just thought in this location that it might tread a little bit lighter in the neighborhood, having the sidewalk along the back of curb, acknowledging that back of curb sidewalk is not the most desirable with snow removal in the wintertime, because you end up you're shoveling 2 things of snow or snow blowing 2 routes of snow. But it is something that with projects in the past, there has been flexibility with property owners that if something comes up during construction, we work with the property owners, and if they prefer it on back of curb, as long as it's not creating a hazard walking through there. So we haven't taken any comments negative towards this, but that's why it was cited like that on the north side of Maxon Street.
It's kind of a follow-up question, please. I see that there's I think maybe 7 or 6 parking spots on the south side. Does that mean that that's going to be the only on-street parking allowed on that street, or are people going to be able to park on the north side, or what does that look like?
The street right now, and I'm not sure if it's statutorily restricted for parking there. At 32 feet face-to-face of curb, you would be able to have parking on-street parking on one side. So this is adjacent to this whole block is being taken up with an apartment building, and this is their entrance to their underground parking. So I would have to review the ordinances to see with the parking restrictions, but typically 32 feet, you can park on two sides, but I would only recommend that if you're in the middle of a neighborhood, like in the middle of the Third Ward or the middle of the East Side Hill. When you're close to an arterial, that's too narrow to have two parking on both sides, but you could comfortably have parking on one side and it would calm down. But when you get closer to the intersection and you have the driveways coming out from the children's theater, that would prohibit the on-street parking in this location unless it's bumped back further like you see in the picture.
Any other questions from council? I don't see any. Thank you very much. This is a public hearing, so if there's anyone here that wishes to speak to this agenda item, you're welcome to come up. I'll ask if there's anyone here that wishes to speak to this agenda item. Good evening.
Hi, good evening. My name is Lisa Aspenson. I reside at 104 Wilcox Street. And I just wanted to make a comment. It seems as though as we're looking at the REAP plan tonight, and in there it says that we would like to launch bike and scooter share programs. We would like to increase cities' bike and pedestrian-friendly environments. And with the questions that Member Gregert was asking, I don't think those answers to the questions really work with this plan very well for the simple things of sharels and things like that in the street. I don't find Barstow Street or the downtown at all friendly to bicycling. In fact, it is most advantageous to go quite far out of your way to not be on narrow streets with large bump outs and big city buses that cross the center line and make it very, very dangerous. So in those questions asked, I would ask that the council please review what we are doing in this neighborhood with the bicycle pedestrian traffic. I know that there's going to be an underpass for the bike trail, but if we have apartment buildings and housing, getting from the bike path to the apartment buildings seems to be a rather dangerous feat that we're putting forward to this neighborhood.
Any questions for Ms. Aspenson? Thanks for coming up. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll close that item and move on to agenda item number 2, which is a public hearing on the city's intention to order the repair of citywide sidewalk and curb and gutter according to 66.0907 of the Wisconsin statutes at 25 locations beginning with 605 South Dewey Street, parcel number 020210. Mr. Solberg.
Thank you. This is our yearly citywide sidewalk and curb and gutter repair project. I'll go through what it is real quickly. It's at 25 locations throughout the city of Eau Claire. We take, over the course of the year, we take complaints if there's a trip hazard, if there's a gap in the sidewalk system in a neighborhood, if curb and gutter is holding water. They're reported to us and we gather the comments over the course of the year, and we put a contract together to fix these throughout the city. It's a pretty straightforward contract. Property owners are special assessed for the repairs for it. Our forestry department, oftentimes there are, thank you, oftentimes there are trees that are starting to cause the, it's a pretty far out scale to get much value on the screen, but if there's a tree in the boulevard that's causing a sidewalk or a curb and gutter or a panel of sidewalk to heave, our forestry department will work with them and remove the roots that are causing that or remove the tree. And then with state statutes, the property owners, once the repairs are approved by the city council, they have 20 days to hire their own contractor or do the work themselves before the city comes in. We typically do the work much later than 20 days afterwards, but if a property owner were to come to us prior to the work being done, we would allow them to do their own work as long as it's done in a manner satisfactory to city specs. So once again, it's a program that is complaint-based. We don't actively go around looking for trip hazards. Some years there's 50 to 60 locations. This year there happens to be 25 with that. With that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions from council? I don't see any. Thank you for coming up. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak to this agenda item? Good evening.
Hi, I just have one question for Dave. Is this,
If I could just have you introduce yourself with your name
Okay.
and your
My name is
address, and
Dave.
then I'll have you speak to us, and then the cameras will
Okay.
pick you up. Thanks.
so my name's Dave Staling. My wife Peggy and I, we are on the city sidewalk in gutter repair. And my question right now is, are we supposed to talk? Is this whole thing all clumped together, or do we actually wait for our specific piece of sidewalk to show up on that list we got? I don't know if I'm supposed to be talking now or if I'm supposed to talk, if you're gonna go through the whole list of every one of them.
No, you're welcome to speak to it now.
About it now? Okay.
And if you have questions, we'll.
All right, so again-
Can you just give us your address? I'm sorry.
Yeah, again, so my name is Dave Staling, and my wife Peggy is also here. We live at 1820 Sun Vista Court, Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And we're on the corner lot of Sunray, in the Sunray Mesa of White Oak and Sun Vista. So we received a complaint about the White Oak section to get added. So I just first wanted to quick say thank you to Jill and Dave Solberg. They've been great. They've given us a lot of information. They led us to this meeting so that we could actually tell you how we feel. And so that's how it starts. And then quickly about our subdivision, we're in the Sunray Mesa subdivision, so it's been around for 12 years, and we built 8 years ago. And then we have noticed, because we walk our subdivision, that there are 10 sections of unconnected sidewalks. So the reason why we're here is because on that big list in the city thing that we were sent, we are the only ones in our neighborhood, but yet there's 10 sections. So I just wanted to read you something I put together as fast as I can go here. I just wanted to let you know that I understand from Dave Solberg that our sidewalk ad came up, subject to a complaint only. So we wanted to talk about this complaint we feel is kind of ridiculous. Yes, the truth about it is we are missing a piece of sidewalk. We can't deny that. The rest of the complaint we feel is not credible. Let's talk about who complained. It has to come from someone either in the subdivision or a neighboring subdivision. Either way, to get to our section of missing sidewalk, that person would have had to walk, bike, run, whatever, other missing pieces of sidewalk to even get to ours. So then I have to ask, why did they pick our section to complain about, to get to us? You know, they had to cross so many other ones. There's multiple places they could have complained. So we feel like, did they just get sick of it that day and finally decide, well, I got to complain about this subdivision, so we just happened to pick this one? Or did they have something out for us maybe? We don't really know. And then why did it take 7 years to get a complaint? And then if it was so bad, wouldn't there be more than one complaint? So do they live in the area anymore? Are we now basing everything on one complaint that's not backed up or credible by any other complaints? If that was the case, I have to believe that the city sidewalks would be perfect throughout Eau Claire. And then we have a question, does the city of Eau Claire practice fair and balanced sidewalk complaint policy? And we hope so. My wife and I aren't here to create any problems. We've never turned in a complaint. We pay our property taxes on time to help pay for salaries and help the city have money to fix other things and move the city forward. I checked all the other sections of missing sidewalk in our subdivision, and none of them have irrigation systems or yards that have spent 8 years of yard professionals working on them for us. So for us, it's truly a waste of money, a waste of time, a waste of services that we already spent money on to make it right, and now we get to do it all over again because of one complaint that's really not backed up by anything other than the fact that we're missing a chunk of sidewalk. It's not backed up by any of the other sidewalks they had to miss or any other complaints in the same neighborhood. And then, of course, we'll be responsible for taking care of all the extra sidewalk, which we're willing to do. But along with that, we already have a fire hydrant and a lot of sidewalk to take care of, so really, it's quite painful. And then, I guess last, I would just kind of say, and I'm not trying to be stern or anything, but, you know, now if I ask the city council to ask themselves how they would feel if it was their sidewalk, their irrigation getting torn up, no one else in their neighborhood getting a complaint, even though they're surrounded by missing chunks of sidewalk. No one else has as much to lose because all the other sidewalks are in areas where there are no sprinkler systems or 8 years of service done to the yards. So we just want to make sure that it's fair and balanced. Many of the other corner lots are just like ours. They have one sidewalk, they're missing the other section. So lastly, my wife and I would like to leave the city council with some what we feel are logical thoughts based on credible information. One of them would be, the first one would be, is if connectivity in the subdivision is really such a problem and such a big deal, then I would suggest to add all of the sections, make it fair and balanced. I mean, because right now we feel like we were the chosen ones and we have no reason why. If the city, again, for number 2, our other thought was, if the city again is going to do all of them, then I would suggest doing them all at the same time. Again, not only is it fair, smart, and cost effective, but if you're going to bring the manpower and the equipment there to do such tiny little jobs, it makes sense to do them all at one time. And then again, that would help us to feel like we're not the ones signaled out of 10 other missing sections of sidewalk. And then last, I'd just like to end by thanking the city council for listening again. We hope that the logic makes perfect common sense, and the reason why we feel it was kind of unfair and not very balanced. We hope that you take the time to seriously rethink the adding of the one piece of sidewalk to our section of our yard. And just remember, it's really not going to fix anything in the subdivision, but satisfying one angry, non-credible complainer. If the city decides to continue adding sidewalk upon us, I would like the same right now then, I guess, to exercise a complaint. I'm not mad, but if we're going to start fixing sidewalk gaps and taking care of complaints, I guess I want all the missing sidewalks taken care of in the neighborhood. Also, the Parkside sidewalks and the park parking lot to be completed in this year, the same year, in the Sunray Mesa subdivision. It would fix the connectivity of safe sidewalks in our subdivision, and our park would finally, after 10 years, get its sidewalk and parking lot. I'm sure there are a lot of other neighbors that I'm speaking for that feel the same way but have never said anything. Again, my wife and I, we're not complainers. We just want what's fair and balanced. We just can't understand being the only one singled out with this complaint. And then, I guess, just thanks for your time. Last thing I would add in there is Sunday I talked to my neighbor John Bang, who is also, our lots would touch. He owns a corner, I own a corner, and then his corners are both done, but he bought a second lot, which is very narrow, very thin. You could never build a home on it, but yet it was a second lot. So he put a little fence up and a garden in there, but he's on the list as well, but he's on the list for a repair and not an ad. And he told me on Sunday that he had got a phone, he called, and when he talked to somebody at that phone number on the sheet we got, that it was a woman, and he didn't get her name, but he said she had said that he is not on for the ad. He is only on for a repair. So if that's the case and my sidewalk goes in, it still doesn't connect anything. We are still going to have that section of his open lot that's between our 2 lots. So that, again, adding it doesn't do any good. There's no connectivity. And I guess that's why we're here, is we just want to voice
Sure.
our opinion.
All right, we appreciate you coming on.
Thank you
Does
for your
council have
time.
any questions for Mr. Staling? Again, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to this agenda item? Councilmember Christopherson.
Thank you, President Weld. I wonder if I could ask a question of Mr. Solberg.
Yes.
So you don't need to reveal who the complaint is, but are those on record so that there would be, do we have record of who might have?
We don't write down names and numbers of people. Oftentimes it'll be a phone call that I'll get in because people don't want to be,
Right,
you know, get the notoriety of complaining about that. But, so we get a complaint in our office, you know, this is a trip hazard, this is something that's a gap. We go check it out. We don't require somebody to live in a neighborhood. We don't require them. If we get a phone call alerting us to a condition, we go out and measure it. And if our standard for a complaint coming in is it reflective of a gap physically being there, or is that trip hazard in violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act? That's what we look at, not if they live in the neighborhood or if they have an axe to grind. So we get those. Sometimes we get emails. We don't typically include names if we have them in our council packets, just to try and keep that information stream coming in, because people are very sensitive about having that information revealed on it.
Right.
So that was the case with this property. Just of note, the other gaps in the neighborhood were reported to us, and they're planned to be under construction next year. So this neighborhood will be filled in. We recently filled in a series of gaps in the business park north of Gulf Road a couple of years ago, west of Highway 93. So it is fairly common. Typically when a subdivision goes in, they have 10 years to build a house. And then the sidewalk is done when the house is built. After 10 years, if there's a vacant lot, then the city can fill the sidewalk gaps in, you know, if on a complaint, and that seems to be the case with some of these lots that are vacant out there. So they won't go in on this contract, but they are planned for the future for that. And the last two with Mr. Staling and Mr. Vang, the sidewalk in question is not on a cul-de-sac, so it is on a through route that connects through. So when the system is done, it will be a fully connected sidewalk system. So that's important to point
May I
out.
have a follow-up, please?
Certainly.
So my other question would be, the information, have we been in contact with that? Do they have an HOA for that development?
I am not sure if they
So
have a homeowners.
we haven't been in contact with the.
Yeah, with the neighbor, we haven't had any outreach with like a neighborhood association, or oftentimes with a condo association we will, but not with this particular sidewalk.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Council Vice President Emmanuel.
Thank you, Council President Weld. Thank you again, Mr. Solberg. I'm wondering if you would be able to please provide council a little bit of background, perhaps before our meeting tomorrow, about any previous legislative decisions or context of which segments of sidewalks I'm guessing were granted a variance at some point in time. Is that something you think you would be able to provide to council?
With regards to like the sidewalk repair contract, or with all of our street projects that come through?
Specifically in the Sunray Mesa development,
Oh.
since it's a newer development, in my head, I'm thinking, well, number one, how does this happen? And then number two, probably because when new developments come, a deferment is requested. So it would just help me in my decision-making, just to get a little more context of how were these gaps decided, and in what context was it supported in?
Sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Solberg while he's up here? Thanks for coming up again. Again, back to the agenda item though. Is there anyone else here that wishes to speak to this agenda item? Good evening.
Hi, I'm Peggy Staling. I'm at 1820 Sun Vista. I just have a question. I understand that you didn't take complaints, or you don't take the name of the name of the person and the number, so you can get back to these people. But there is a perfectly good sidewalk across the street from us. So I guess I'm just wondering, do you try to appease these people to say, you know, I get it if there's just no place to walk and you're just on road, which there is 2 places in that subdivision that you do have to walk straight on the road. That, I mean, it is what it is. But we've actually been in our house almost 9 years, and there has been homes that have been in there. If you're saying that it's been 10 years, that the city goes through and starts, there's been homes in there that have been in there longer than 10 years, and they still don't have sidewalk. So I guess I'm with my husband. It's like, why are we being singled out when there's been, and 2 of the places, one of them is, there is no sidewalk on either side, so you have to walk on the street. So,
I don't know, Mr. Solberg wants to answer the question in regards to, I think no matter what side of the street the trip hazard is on, it still has to be addressed, whether there's an opportunity to walk to the other side, but maybe Mr. Solberg can.
Sure. If there's a gap, like with the 10 years on there, if there's a subdivision that is in and there's a vacant lot, it's 8 years old, and we haven't got that 10-year mark and it's reported to us, we typically don't bring those forward because they have 10 years, and then if it's vacant or not developed upon, then we would fill those gaps, and that's been a handful of cases in the last 5-6 years. Once it gets to that 10-year mark and it's reported to us, then we would bring that forward with this contract, because that's typically the grace period that's given for a business park or a subdivision to develop. We still don't go to the areas of town when we hit the 10-year mark and check to see which vacant lots don't have sidewalk for those. So we do investigate if we have a complaint, why the Stalings and the Vang portion of sidewalk was called in for us. I'm not sure. We don't ask for reasons why. We simply just ask, for an address, and if it's a trip or if it's a gap, to go out and look at it. So I guess that's where we are with this one. The other gaps were reported, so if those where there's no sidewalk on either side, where there isn't a sidewalk on either side, we're called in next year. They'll be on the list to be brought forward, and then the council can decide. Sometimes when we have a complaint or a gap, we typically, all of our street projects, unless there's topography or extenuating circumstances, bring forward sidewalk on both sides of the street within the city of Eau Claire. And then the council has the discretion, as they have in other street projects, to have sidewalk on one side or the other if it's in the public's best interest. But typically, all of our projects that we have in the city, we bring forward a staff with sidewalk along both sides, because that's kind of the expectation when you're in an urban environment, that there is sidewalk on both sides of the street. So that's why when we get a gap complaint, even if there's a sidewalk on one side, we still bring forward the gap side with that. So does that help?
Answer your question?
No, I don't like it, but that's okay.
Okay.
I think it's being a disservice not getting the answer of why someone's complaining. I guess I feel that if someone's complaining, you should just know. You can't just call up somebody and say, I'm complaining on this particular, and then that's it. You should want to know why this person's complaining, so that when you come and speak to someone like me, I want to know why I'm going to have to spend thousands of dollars fixing my house because somebody complained for what reason. I don't mean to be upset. It's just the mom coming out of me. And it's money coming out of our pocket that we have spent. And I really would like you guys to just really reconsider going forward with this project on adding the sidewalk to our subdivision in our area. And I guess if this needs to get brought down in a couple of years or next year, we definitely want to know about this, because I feel right now what's happening is a disservice to us.
Sure.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming up. Mr. Solberg, did you have?
I would like to point out that these two areas of sidewalk, one with the Staling residents, is covered under a special assessment policy change that was last year when we treated sidewalks for corner residential properties the same as streets. So if you have a residential property, you live on a corner lot, you pay special assessments for where your address is, but not on the side. So the sidewalk in reference with the Staling property will not be charged to the property owners. So there is not a special assessment for that piece of sidewalk with this policy or with this project. Same with the Vang residents or neighbors. That falls under a different part of the special assessments, but they have an irregular shaped lot, and there's an adjustment factor for street assessments if the street was done, and the same applies to sidewalks for that. So I just wanted to point that out. And as far as a complaint, for us in engineering, we don't care if somebody's mad at somebody, or if all we care about is if we're alerted to a gap or a trip hazard, we have to go out and look at it. So it's probably not so much a complaint, but it's a notice to us that there's something wrong with or there's an issue with the sidewalk system. So that was probably a poor choice of words on my part, but we don't look at the motivation behind a complaint. We look at what the physical environment is, and if somebody's very angry and they call us up, or if somebody's very nice, we still look at the physical environment that was reported to us and determine if there's a trip hazard, a gap, if it meets the criteria that it takes to get put on the list. So that's how it ends up on here. We don't try to let our emotions get in here to dictate which stretches are fixed. So.
Thank you for the clarification. Again, back to the agenda item. Is there anyone else here that wishes to speak to this, to the sidewalk repair? Do you want to answer the question before he speaks, or?
Oh, no, I don't.
Okay. Good evening.
Dana Larson, 5993 North Shore Drive. This question only occurred to me upon hearing this issue. Mr. Solberg, has it been considered in the department, and is it feasible within regulations for building sidewalks, as opposed to removing the roots of the tree or removing perhaps an old large tree completely, to have an accessible and small but perhaps yet pleasant arch in the sidewalk that would allow the tree roots to continue to grow naturally?
Yeah, again, we should stay on the agenda item that we're addressing right now, which I don't think involves any of your concern or question. If it's more of an issue regarding just for information purposes for something in the future for you, then I'll recommend you give Mr. Solberg a call and he can go through how we worked with that in the past. Is that?
It would be more of a suggestion in general for the city and
Sure.
the council, but
We appreciate
merely a
it.
query.
All right. Thank you. Councilmember Christopherson, did you have?
I reconsidered the appropriateness of my comment. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Anyone else that wishes to speak to this agenda item? Seeing none, then we'll close the public hearings and move on to public discussion. And agenda item number 3, which is a public discussion of the Renewable Energy Action Plan and its sub-action plans. Good evening, Mr. Noel.
Good evening, City Council. We'll cue up the presentation. Pleasure to be with you this evening, and hopefully you enjoyed the 300 pages plus of material on the REAP plan. Apologize, there's not a lot of time to read all that material when you got your packet, but we have a presentation here for you, and we have a, there we go. So, there we go, bear with me. Here we go. Next, okay. So the Renewable Energy Action Plan is a plan that is going to be part of the comprehensive plan. And its main purpose is to fulfill these goals that you passed in March of 2018. The goals, this little chart here shows the goal of 100% renewable energy by 2050, and then also carbon neutrality to basically mitigate carbon emissions to offset whatever is released by either sequestration or eliminate them altogether. So this plan is actually 30% reduction by 30, so it's easy to think of 30% by 2030. And with these goals, we needed to actually do a plan, and so you authorized to do a plan as the next step. And before you pass those goals, the council at that time actually used a public survey in 2017 to inform that the public did aggressively want to pursue more renewable energy and greenhouse gases. About 3 out of 4 of the public were interested in these type of goals, which gave the city council confidence to move forward with passing these goals. And why are we doing this? We're understanding, oh great, thank you. We're understanding that there is a change to our state in terms of a warming, a few degrees since measurements in 1960, about 2.8 Fahrenheit, and it's predicted to even grow warmer, which would then change our climate in terms of the growing conditions for agriculture and also for just heat and precipitation events. Why does this matter to communities? It does pose real risks in terms of disasters. The NOAA agency with the federal department, they have been tracking multi-billion-dollar disaster events, and as we see that the trend line is actually increasing, we can't peg any one event to actually a climate change event, but we know as the Earth's atmosphere warms more, we have more energy in the environment, and that actually fuels more violent storms. And so this does have a real impact on the ground in terms of our infrastructure, our livelihoods, our businesses as well. And we see some of this, fortunately, Eau Claire's in a pretty good situation climate-wise and topography-wise. We do experience some flooding, but we also are prone to some different events, whether it's drought or snow events like we saw last year as well. And so we also need to think about this in terms of our power issues and also our business continuity planning. If power goes out or if infrastructure goes out, what we need to do to make sure that we're more resilient. And so the REAP plan also looks at how we integrate this with our disaster recovery plan, our multi-hazard mitigation plan, which you approved last year, or 2 years ago now. And this is really looking at trying to integrate the two plans together between adaptation, which might be like shoring up levees along the Chippewa River in the North Riverfronts neighborhood. So we've tried to pull in different plans into the REAP plan so that they're all consistent with existing plans of the city. So with that, let's get into the plan development. So this was authorized by council to undertake, and the funders, the city contributed money as well to this project with staff time, also some of the different studies. The U.S. Department of Energy actually funded most of this plan through a grant through the Public Service of Wisconsin, and then also through our partnership with Xcel Energy, we have a robust funding package to undertake these projects. So the project team included, obviously, the city as the lead, our Sustainability Advisory Committee, which was the main committee that you, in their work plan, authorized them to take care, to do this plan. We also hired Pale Blue Dot, our architectural consultant, and with Partners in Energy, their team, they have consultants, Center for Energy and Environment out of the Twin Cities, the Brendel Group out of Fort Collins, Colorado, and then Amoresco, which is also out of the Twin Cities. The Partners in Energy team, and Julie Toney with Xcel is here as well this evening, was great to work with. They work with communities in Minnesota and Colorado regarding these plans. Typically, these plans are energy action plans. Ours is that and also a climate action plan. But we have our team here with Tammy Gundersek, Lori Drilling, and Julie Toney, as well as Jenny Edwards and Jamie Johnson, who are the community facilitators. The REAP steering committee, there was 45 people on this committee, and this represents a big cross-section of the community in terms of different industry stakeholders and the school district and environmentalists and business representatives as well. Could I get a glass of water? That would be helpful. Okay, thanks. And so this steering committee worked together for 5 workshops to devise the plan. And the steering committee, we gauged, their backgrounds in terms of their representation. And on this, we did surveys before our beginning of our meetings, and we saw that not only did they represent a particular sector, but they also had a lot of influences in terms of in the community, whether they represented a business group, they might also be a part of a neighborhood or the school district or a neighborhood. And so there's a lot of good cross sections here. Community background, the committee's background, we asked the committee what their literacy is on energy issues and climate change, and so we see a strong representation for those groups.
All right, well, to introduce myself, I am Julie Toney. I'm our Community Service Manager for Xcel Energy here in Eau Claire. I was here to speak on behalf of Xcel Energy in support of this tonight, which I will still do. But in light of our situation, I'm going to try to just finish giving you the highlights of the Renewable Energy Action Plan and kind of the steps of what we did. And we'll see if we can keep this moving forward for you. So
We appreciate your help.
absolutely. So as Ned was saying, we did have 5 separate workshops over the past 9 months or so here to refine the plan details and to kind of break it down into the various components.
This was the public participation. This was during a conference that we had for 200 planners that were in town. And as part of that planning process, this was a board that was put up in Haymarket Plaza to get community input over a 2-day process where people could write down their ideas on how they would lower their environmental impact.
Thank you, Dale.
It's a team effort.
It is a team effort. It is, absolutely, absolutely. So as a part of the Renewable Energy Action Plan, or we'll refer to it as REAP, moving forward, there were several pieces of it. One was the full plan itself, and the second is an electric vehicle roadmap, which will help inform how the city and the community will move towards an electric vehicle format moving forward. And then finally, there's also a net zero energy building guide. So as community members move forward on building structures like that, or businesses will, the guide helps show them ways in which they can do that. There is, as Ned mentioned at the beginning, the actual plan itself is pretty hefty, and there's a lot of detail in there, which is also very important. But for you to just have a quick view, or for anyone else within the community who's looking for more of the high-level Cliff Notes version, if you will, there is a 4-page executive summary that kind of highlights the whole plan and talks about why it's important to our community. So the vision as put forward is, I'm going to just read it here. It is the Eau Claire Claire's Renewable Energy Action Plan will be guided by an evidence-based, transparent, equitable, and inclusive process to meet the goals of 100% renewable energy and carbon neutrality by 2050. You know, that sounds like a kind of a mouthful and a lot of words, but I really want to tell you, I was there for the planning and the careful thought process that went behind creating that vision. And it was very interesting, and this plan really was created to be based on science and evidence and factual information. It's designed to be transparent so that our community members can look at any piece of it as they have questions and feel comfortable that it isn't something that's hidden, or something that's, you know, kind of sneaky, or something that they can't understand. It's something that they can certainly find out about. It's meant to be equitable across all of our citizens and community members, no matter what their ethnicity is, no matter what their social or economic status is. It's meant for everyone. So I really do like that was put into it. And so these ongoing efforts will strengthen our leadership in sustainability and renewable energy development for generations to come. And there are some guiding principles that this is based on. It's based on equity and inclusiveness, on economic development, and ecosystem stewardship. There are also 6 different sectors that this encompasses, so it's not just energy, and it's not just one single thing, but it's all 6 of them, and I don't think he has them all listed there. I'm going to need your help to tell. You guys, can you help me with what the 6 are for sure? It's energy, it's transportation, biodiversity, waste management,
Housing,
and housing.
commercial development. Yep.
Commercial development. I'm sorry, I didn't know those without having them written down. I apologize. So these are all broken down, and the plan is organized in 68 near-term strategies, and each of the strategies does have a goal, a metric, and a critical pathway. And those pathways are modeled, and they do focus on the carbon neutrality goal. And the renewable energy focus section focuses on the 100% renewable energy goal. And then the implementation of the program includes the major milestones that need to be done over the next 10 years and the timing priority of that. And the tactics and how that's going to be done and some of the actions are included in Appendix A. And then there's also a list of longer-term initiatives for 2030 and beyond. And then there is the municipal component of this, so it's kind of showing how the city will do it with their fleets and in their buildings and things first. And that will demonstrate the leadership for then the community at large to be able to do that as a whole. Because remember, this goal and the overall plan of carbon neutrality and being 100% renewable energy is a goal for both the city and the municipality itself and the city, the citizens of Eau Claire. So for the residential sector, the renewable energy critical pathway, that is on page 24 if you want to refer to that. That's the goal of that is to convert 200 households per year to all renewable electricity. And the strategy within that is listed as R8 within that section. And it's to increase privately owned solar. And the goal is for 50 new systems per year within that section. And that we will have a year to promote using the city's Solar Ready Guide and the calculators within that piece of the plan. And their goal is to keep this for the general public and to keep permitting fees low and zoning favorable. So as people want to start doing these projects in their homes, they can be done easily and not without a lot of red tape or worry. And there is a Solar Ready Guide, and that is published on the city's website along with the renewable energy, all the plans and the pieces of this. So our community members can find that and certainly refer to that and start using it. So there's also the Net Zero Energy Building Guide. And again, that is certainly just to show for both residential construction and commercial construction how they can create their structures and build them in a manner that is energy efficient and certainly helps contribute to the goals within this plan. The electric vehicle roadmap is it's a great another piece of this that was kind of it was done separately outside of those 5 workshops we talked about for the overall renewable energy action plan. The EV roadmap was kind of a separate deal, and we had several workshops on that. And we worked with the city on how they're going to convert their fleet to electric vehicles moving forward and to model the way then for the community. So the goal is to to achieve 15% of the goal for the municipality. Will need about 55 electric vehicles in their fleet. And by 2030, we're looking at building a strong foundation for all of our citizens who want to have electric vehicles and be able to charge those. We're looking to have about 160 public charging stations. And then by 2030, the goal is to have at least 8,000 of the registered vehicles to be electric in the community. And the goal is to have 10% of the vehicle miles traveled electrified. So that's 8,000 electric vehicles. So Vehicle miles traveled is the measurement of how we're trying to measure that, and that's what we'll be able to use moving forward to see how we're doing with that. And we're looking at having 15% of the municipalities' electric vehicles, or have at least 55 of them be electric vehicles by 2030. This graph shows the city's carbon footprint, the community's carbon footprint, and you can, I honestly don't know the details behind this one. I can't talk to this one. Do you guys know?
It just shows year by year.
It shows the change year by year.
I think it's 2015 through 2018.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit hard to read some of the small items, but it shows you the different changes in the carbon footprint. Mr. Peters.
I was just going to suggest that maybe, Ms. Tony, just maybe if we just flip through them and people can look at them, and then, to the extent if you, I mean, and then we can have the public, stand up and comment on it afterwards.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. So if I'm not sure, just kind of move
Yeah.
through them. All right, because
Thanks.
some of these, honestly, I've never seen them till
Right.
tonight either, so I can't make it up if I don't know, and I'm not going to try, so. All right. These are some pretty balloons. I know they had a bunch like this in Hudson a couple weeks ago. I'm sure Ned had something really great to say about them, but I don't know what that was. I'm so sorry. This is a lot of data. It's about the different sections that we're going to be focusing on, but I'm not sure what the point was on this slide. I'm so sorry. This kind of illustrates over the coming years the different segments and of the pie, so you can see the different colors. So we talked about the 6 sections, whether it's transportation or residential, commercial, natural gas, and it kind of just shows how each of those will be reduced in the coming years based on the goals. This is comparing 2015 and 2030 as far as fossil fuels versus renewable energy, and the goal will be for, right now it's about 6% of renewable energy, and by 2030 the goal will be for 16%. This shows more about this city's carbon footprint, but I honestly don't know what was being pointed out there. This shows actually the different impacts of carbon-free and renewable energy from 2015 to 2030, and it breaks it down by the different sectors. So this will be an interesting one just for you to look at as you go through the packet or go through the information. You can see right now the buildings and facilities take up 33% of that. I think that's the color, 33%. And that would be down to 12%. So it just kind of shows the different sectors over the years. I'm not sure what he's showing on this one. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. You can just keep
Sorry.
going. That's
I'm
fine.
trying to read it
Yeah,
quick.
yeah,
I'm sorry.
sure.
I
we
just don't
understand.
know. This has a lot of data on it too. I'm not sure what he was pointing out on there. But to wrap up, overall, the renewable energy plan is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. It really will help to show that our community can continually be an attractive city where people want to live and work. It'll help us thrive as a regional center with good jobs in education, healthcare, and manufacturing. It will help achieve compact growth, including nodes of higher intensity, to build move-up housing and maintain a clear rural edge. It'll help bring about redevelopment and infill growth, particularly in the older neighborhoods. It'll also improve household economic well-being. And finally, and importantly, it'll help practice environmental stewardship. So leading up to this, the Planning Commission adopted the REAP on February 17th. The Sustainability Advisory Committee adopted it on February 18th. And of course, we're at the public hearing right now. And then we're asking for you to approve the adoption tomorrow when the vote comes.
Thank you, Ms. Tony.
You're welcome.
We appreciate your help there. Does
You're welcome.
council have any questions
Mm-hmm.
for Ms. Tony? Otherwise, we can invite our other committee members up. Councilmember Beaton.
I wonder if council would be interested. I was also on the REAP committee, and I'm happy to fill in as well. If there's any, just for extra context, I'm
Yeah,
sure we'll probably
sure.
hear from folks too. Is that appropriate?
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you.
Yeah, you're
So
welcome.
much for filling in.
It's fine.
And thank you very much to Excel for all the support. It's been great to have you all as a partner. So,
Absolutely. It was our pleasure.
yeah. So I served on the REAP committee, and the one thing that I was most impressed by is how truly it was such a publicly engaging process. We had folks from every kind of sector of our community, sectors that I didn't ever imagine that we would that would be interested in participating in a process like this, but that were there and really offered some really important insight into how we can continue to grow as a city that is more sustainable in ways that will not damage any parts of our business community or anything like that. Any parts of our any different sectors of our community, and so that was the thing that was most impressive to me. The real recommendations in this package are policies and ways that we can invest our money that have been considered by every kind of corner of our community and people representing those corners of our community. And so I think that this will be a really useful document moving forward. I also wanted to lift that equity was a big part of this document as well. We know that we can forward the clean energy movement in ways that are going to benefit some and not others, and actually widens the gap of inequality that our communities see. And so that lens of equity was applied to this document, and that's all thanks to such a public process and the wonderful people that we were lucky enough to have serve on this committee. So obviously it's 300 pages, so you'll have to look at the exact policies, but I think that they're well representative of our community and our values.
Thank you, Councilmember Beaton.
Agreed.
Any other questions right now for Ms. Tony? Council Vice President Emmanuel.
Thank you, Council President Weld. This question isn't necessarily for you, and I know we're taking an unconventional approach tonight, so
It's okay.
I totally accept and welcome the tag team approach. I would be curious if there would be, to learn a little bit more about the land recognition statement that was added to this document. This is my understanding, this is the first time in perhaps the city's history that we have ever acknowledged the land in which the city of Eau Claire occupies. I think this is not only important, but also easily replicable, that we could be looking at other places. But since this was such an involved process, and I see some head nodding, I would just be interested from one person from the committee sharing a little bit about how did that come about and contextualizing the importance of having that in here.
I don't know the specifics about how it got added. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. It's no
I missed
problem.
one section, and do any of you know the specifics behind how it got added?
I can answer that.
Otherwise,
Do you remember?
Councilmember
Yeah.
Beaton can.
So that was added at one of our last committee meetings by a student representative. And so I know that the campus has done a lot of work kind of lifting that heritage of our city. And so that was added with excitement from the rest of the committee. So it was a quick and kind of easy recommendation that was easy to apply.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Again, we appreciate you coming up. We may still have
welcome.
questions for you. So.
That's fine.
Yeah, but we'll invite the rest of your committee up if that's okay.
Okay, yep.
Is there anyone else from the committee or from the public that wishes to speak to this agenda item? Oh, sure.
Good evening, council members. I'm Dr. Crispin Pierce, 1314 South Farwell. I've been a member of the committee since its inception, 6 years as vice chair. I want to share the degree of detail, the degree of effort we put into this effort. 2 years, 5 public hearings, hundreds of people were involved in this. I'm actually quite proud of the detail we have in it. I want to emphasize a couple things in particular. There's a lot of flexibility built into this document. So we have these goals, and in some ways we're not clear exactly how we're going to get there. We have our 6 areas of emphasis, things like transportation, biodiversity, housing, supporting the business community, supporting green jobs. We have many ways, and I think many people in this town, including people sitting at the dais right now, we're going to make this happen, including myself. There are a lot of ways, we have a lot of flexibility. The other main point I want to make is that while this talks about biodiversity, it talks about natural resources, it's about human health. Ultimately, we're talking about slowing the spread of Lyme disease. We're talking about having better air quality. We're talking about better water quality. It's also a place that I think we have a lot of pride in looking. Some of us in this room won't be alive in 2050 when this comes to fruition, but my child will, I think, our grandchildren will in many ways. I think it's a real important legacy step that we can take together. Is it going to cost, is it going to take some investment over time and some compromise? Absolutely. But again, if I can leave you with the emphasis that this is really well thought out, a long process. We spent 2 years putting together with hundreds of stakeholders. It has built-in flexibility. It's something we can do in this town. So with that having been said, I'm happy to have any questions or other.
Any questions from council? We appreciate you coming up and your comments.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I have a handout.
Okay, great.
Good evening. Thanks for letting us have an opportunity to speak. My name is Paula Klein-Chisneff. I'm a professor of biology at UW-Eau Claire. I'm also an entomologist and a conservation biologist, and I just have to say that this plan is phenomenal. I also teach environmental science, and there's been a lot of effort, as Crispin said. But what I'm here tonight primarily is to encourage the city of Eau Claire to consider becoming an official Bee City USA, because supporting a Bee City designation would directly contribute to the biodiversity sector of the plan. Actually, 7 of the strategies would directly benefit pollinators and open space, and I'll get into the detail, but would help with the implementation. And so the question might be is, what is the Bee City program? The Bee City USA program endorses a set of commitments by a city defined in a resolution by creating sustainable habitats for native pollinators. Being a Bee City would directly contribute to the biodiversity sector, as I previously mentioned, of the REAP, to increase natural carbon sinks in Eau Claire and by enhancing local vegetation and natural landscapes. So when I looked at the biodiversity report, and you look at B4, B5, B6, I mean, urban trees, that's pollen and nectar and sap for early flying native bees in particular, natural spaces, new developments and green space, wildlife corridors, alternatives to lawns. Dandelions are good for bees and, and native bees. Reduce herbicides, fertilizers, insecticides, and support local food producers and urban farmers. Really, the Bee City is taking away, there's 104 cities across the country. There are 6 in Wisconsin. 5. We would become the 6th. We started this with my conservation biology class several months ago, and there were only 3 at the time. So we're hoping to get Eau Claire on the map as a Bee City. And there's a lot of expertise in this town. There's a lot of partnerships. We've already reached out to many folks in town. And there's a lot of pre-existing frameworks that I think a lot of you are familiar with. There's Bird City USA, which I've been very involved with Steve Bechtel. There's Tree City USA. We have the community gardens. We have farmers markets, green space stewardship. We have the honeybee ordinance. We're ahead of the game. You don't even have to have a honeybee ordinance, but that's a real coup for the application process. It would all provide a really smooth transition to Bee City USA. And, I provided you the handout because I could stand up here, I only have so many minutes, but it defines to you a little more of what is a bee city, why Eau Claire makes an ideal candidate to become an official bee city, and why conserving pollinators native and the introduced honeybee are important. And, that's all highlighted here, and many of you may know that pollinators are in decline, and native bees are our insurance policy for both native bee decline as well as honeybee decline, particularly when we had that colony collapse disorder so prevalent a few years ago and still in some areas. So I hope you take a look at this. I've provided a lot more information. I've provided a lot of the potential partners and folks that we've talked to. There's a lot of people on board and said, "Oh, I'd be behind it. I'd be really excited." And I will say, I grow my own food. I use native pollinator plantings in my own perennial gardens. I planted 7 acres of prairie land on old erodible, highly erodible agricultural land outside of town, or a little farther away from town. I walk the talk, right? And so I'm a true believer. This program was proposed and supported by the Xerces Society for Insect Conservation or Invertebrate Conservation, a very high reputable organization, and it's really taking the country by storm, let alone a lot of other pollinator programs. So again, why I was here tonight is really to showcase it and want you to realize that there's a program that if we adopt with the resolution could be a great way to serve as kind of that, to help with that biodiversity portion of the program, of the sector of the plan. So I think I only had one last comment because I had to mention this in the picture that you have in the biodiversity. Let me flip it before I run out of my 30 seconds. There's a beautiful spring beauty here, okay? It's an early spring ephemeral. Overwintering queen bumblebees pollinate this plant. There's a specialist adrenid native ground nesting bee that pollinates this plant, and maybe some flies. This flower blooms and dies. It relies on native pollinator conservation. Some honeybees also pollinate them, and I know I have some other colleagues in town who will also, share their passion for pollinators, and just know that there's a lot of us in town that will work to make this happen, and we'll help you. So, thank you.
We appreciate you coming up. Any questions from council? Again, thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak?
Hi, I'm Jody Lepsch. I live at 3760 Maywood Drive. I am the instructor at CVTC for the Beekeeping for Beginners course, and I would like to offer my support for adding Eau Claire as a Bee City USA. We're entering our 3rd year of the program at CVTC, and thus far we've had 75 students already take our course. Chippewa Valley Beekeepers, along with Beaver Creek Reserve, also offer a course. The Excel Energy property that's going to offer to have up to 200 hives on it in Halley just demonstrates how much interest there is in beekeeping, and we need to make sure that the resources are available. Honeybees are great, but they do offer competition for our native bees, and we need to make sure that there's enough for everybody to eat. So that's all I had.
Great.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming up. Any questions? Good evening.
Good evening, Lisa Aspenson. I live at 104 Wilcox. I am so much for this plan, and thank you so much for everyone that worked on it. It's amazing that we have this before us in the city of Eau Claire. We also have a perfect opportunity, as the ladies mentioned, to add a few more things about our pollinating friends to make sure that our community is well aware in our education sector and all of our volunteers who are willing to put efforts forward to work on the pollinating program for the city. I think this is a good start, and with a few things of language and verbiage added to the plan, it's going to be even a greater plan. So I encourage that, looking at it tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Any questions for Ms. Aspenson? Thanks for coming up. Anyone else here that wishes to speak to the agenda item? and the Renewable Energy Action Plan.
Hello, my name is James Bolter. I live at 1226 Graham Avenue here in Eau Claire. I am a professor of chemistry and environmental studies at the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. And like my colleagues, Dr. Klein-Chesneff and Dr. Crispin-Pierce, I want to, and also as a member of the REAP committee, along with Councilwoman Beaton and many others in this room, I want to strongly urge you to overwhelmingly pass this plan as a recognition of the excellent work and efforts of Ned Noel and city staff who've worked tirelessly on this, many student interns who have contributed everything from the survey data that you saw about citizens, Eau Claire citizens' interests and commitment to renewable energy, and also the carbon footprint analyses, all done by students at UW Eau Claire and UW University of Wisconsin system. I emphasize all the wonderful things that Councilwoman Beaton said about this process as being inclusive and intentional and thoughtful, and I was very privileged to be a part of it. I was also very honored to give the sort of keynote in the very first meeting, which was Ned invited me to come and speak a little bit about the incentive, why it's so important that we do this. I love this plan. I think this is an ambitious plan, and I think it's a reasonable plan. But frankly, this plan is probably not enough. If we read the United Nations reporting on what it will take to get to a 1.5 degrees Celsius world instead of a 2 or 3 or 4 degrees Celsius world, we actually need to be closer to 50% reduction as a planet by 2030, and that's a hard order. So I look at the things that were recommended in this plan, and you know what? Every single one of them being around the table there, every single one of them, we looked at them, we said, is this going to be meaningful? Will it cut emissions? And will it be feasible? And really the things that made it in were the things that passed those sorts of analyses. So I really think that the kinds of things that we're seeing in this plan are not pie in the sky. They are doable. And what's more, we are in great company. We in the city of Eau Claire are joined by communities across the state of Wisconsin as we seek to attain carbon neutrality and renewable energy, and around the country and frankly around the world, where the United States is at the national level is seriously lagging. But thank God for municipalities that are carrying the torch forward. So, and not only is it possible and important, but it's prudent. And the reason it's prudent is this. It's not just cities and counties and local municipalities that are engaging in these kinds of activities. Corporations around the country and around the world are making similar commitments. You may have heard in the news just today, Microsoft has pledged not only to go carbon neutral, but to actually offset all of their historic emissions. So they will actually be retroactively carbon neutral. We look at the commitments of Apple and Google and frankly a lot of non-tech companies as well. And the reason it's prudent is because the communities that are ambitious in this way are going to attract those kind of companies to make investments in our town here in Eau Claire. We see this, for example, in the state of Iowa, where they because of their renewable energy standards dating back to the 80s, extraordinarily. And Iowa became a real leader in wind technology and installing wind energy in the state of Iowa. We saw a Google data center and an Apple data center located in the state of Iowa. Why? Because they knew they could meet their own renewable energy goals by locating in an area that was ambitious and was going to lay the groundwork for them. So there are great partners. There are partners from Xcel Energy and Eau Claire Energy Cooperative who've been instrumental in moving the needle already. There are the partners of the Eau Claire School District, and then there are the partners of the university, and of course the county now, all of whom are sharing this same 2050 goal. So I urge you to vote. Every one of you, I urge you for a unanimous vote on this because it is prudent, it is conservative, and it is sorely needed. So thank you for your time, and thank you for your positive vote on this, this wonderful plan.
We appreciate your comments. Any questions from council? Thanks again. Anyone else here that wishes to speak to this agenda item?
I'll give it a go.
Sure. Good evening.
Aaron Brewster, 451 Lincoln Avenue, Eau Claire, Wisconsin, 54701. I was also a member of the REAP thing, the REAP committee situation, as it were, and I was a giant pain in Ned's butt for basically the entire thing. I'm like, this isn't going fast enough. We're not doing what we need to do. I share Dr. Bolter's concern, based on UN projections. And quite frankly, I don't think the people that benefited the most from an environmentally unfriendly past are being held accountable and financially responsible for it. But that being said, this is what we can do. This is what we should do. And just because we have these benchmarks at 2030, 2040, 2050, et cetera, it doesn't mean we can't try to go a little faster. If we can hit the 2030 benchmark by 2026, that would be great. So I urge you to vote in favor of this, and that's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Brewster. Any questions from council? Thanks again for coming
Thanks
on.
much.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to this agenda item? Certainly.
Hi. My name is Julie Toney.
Sure.
I think you already know that.
Yep.
I don't know if I need to restate it or not. I actually did come here tonight also to speak on behalf of Xcel Energy, just to show our support for the Renewable Energy Action Plan. We were extremely pleased that the city of Eau Claire became our first Wisconsin community to participate in our Partners in Energy program. I really did want to take a moment to commend Ned for all the work he did on the front end of this project. He actually came to us with some ideas about it and worked with us to try to figure out a way to make it happen. He did spend a very large amount of time working hard with the Public Service Commission's Office of Energy Innovation, and he did certainly help secure the grant funding that made this project possible. I also commend this council and the Sustainability Advisory Committee for providing your thorough review of the proposed REAP process at the outset of this, and for providing the approval to move forward and go ahead and work on the plan. It was an important, impressive process to be part of, as I mentioned earlier. The discussions and the dialogue by the committee were open and deep, and we believe the proposed REAP reflects a broad cross-section of our community, and that each voice was heard and involved in the process. It was exciting for us that the sub-plan for the EV community roadmap was the first of its kind for our company, and it actually is being used as a model for us to use with other communities nationwide. So it's really, really neat that it started right here in Eau Claire. It's personally a really exciting time for me to see the community that I live in and I work in moving forward on this mission of carbon neutrality and renewable energy. And I think it's exciting that it ties in so well with Xcel Energy's goal of being carbon-free by 2050. I think this city should be proud to be such a leader and to be able to serve as a model for other communities all around, the country. There are people watching us to see what we're doing, and I think that's really, really impressive. I'm excited that the goals in this plan reflect our community and that we are eager to continue working together with all the stakeholders to continue moving this forward, and certainly urge you to go ahead and vote to approve this tomorrow. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Toney. Any questions from council? Thank you.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate the team effort from
Absolutely.
everyone.
Thanks.
So, was there anyone else that wishes to speak to this agenda item? Seeing none, maybe before we move on, is there any update on Mr. Noel as far as everything okay? Okay, I'm sorry.
Good enough? Yeah. He's okay.
He's okay.
He's okay.
That's all we really wanted to know.
Yep.
So, good. All right, so moving on to agenda item number 4, which is the public discussion of a resolution supporting the proposed Eau Claire Black River Falls Toma Amtrak shuttle connection. Mr. Gregor, did you wish to introduce this?
Sure.
Item?
Yeah, thank you, President Weld. I've actually had a little practice speaking to this to the media a bit because it's been quite of interest. So there's a resolution on the screen now that's also in the packet that I'm guess the mover of and seconded by Emily Anderson for consideration tomorrow. That would support some conversations and that are happening with the Wisconsin Department of Transportation and with folks in the advocacy community working on expanding passenger rail service in Wisconsin and also making sure that existing service is more available for communities and people that live near existing Amtrak stations. So right now, there's the Empire Builder Amtrak route that goes through Wisconsin from Chicago to Milwaukee through kind of southern Wisconsin over to Toma and La Crosse and up the Mississippi on the Minnesota side to the Twin Cities. And there's discussion about adding a second train frequency a day, at least between the Twin Cities and Chicago. The Empire Builder route actually goes all the way out to the Pacific Northwest. So the resolution supports the idea of creating a shuttle service from downtown Eau Claire. Our new bus transit center will be done in a couple years, perhaps sooner than that, and could accommodate these types of services that are maybe intercity buses, things like that, that are would be able to serve the city. So this is something that a shuttle would actually be something you could buy a ticket for as part of your Amtrak or part of your passenger train ticket, both to connect to the existing Amtrak service, but also potentially additional frequencies on that route. And it would be timed so that you wouldn't necessarily, like if the train was running late, you could actually have a more timely connection. So a lot of that's outlined in here. Obviously, the long-term goal is to have passenger rail service serving right through Eau Claire in the future, and it looks like the most feasible connection would be from Eau Claire to the Twin Cities at first, but then potentially down through Toma to Chicago. So this resolution really has two focus areas. It's supporting that idea of the bus or the shuttle connection to the existing Amtrak line, but also supporting the additional train frequencies on that route. The West Central Wisconsin Rail Coalition has been working with the city over the years to explore, how to improve rail service, and the Eau Claire Area Chamber of Commerce has as well. And this kind of just fits with some of the advocacy that those organizations have been doing. And I believe the county may be considering a resolution of this nature. And I just heard from Congressman Kine's office that they're, interested in writing a letter of support too. So it's kind of something that's bubbling up, and I thought we would jump in the middle of it. So that's my introduction.
Thank you, Councilmember Gregor. Any questions from council? Seeing none, then we will open it up for discussion. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak to this agenda item? Again, I'll ask if there's anyone here that wishes to speak to this agenda item. Seeing none, we will move on to the public comment period. I'm not sure if there's anyone here that is signed up. If you just give us one moment, and she'll grab the list. And in the meantime, let me just cover some of the protocol. in regards to the public commentary. Again, please state your name and the city of Eau Claire address. Public comment period is for those living or working in the city of Eau Claire. Please note that your thoughts or ideas should be regarding issues or concerns of citywide application, and please do not comment on issues that were on tonight's agenda, as council wants and needs to hear those comments during the noticed hearing or discussion. You will have 3 minutes to speak, and the same light system will be in use. When the yellow light comes on, you have 1 minute remaining. This comment period will last for 20 minutes unless it is the wish of 2/3 of the council to extend it. I have Tab Butler. Are you here this evening? Certainly. Do you want to come up? Good evening.
Tab Butler. I live at 614 East Grand Avenue. And I'm just, we're going to start trying to give you regular updates, what we're doing at Roundtable Revival, which is reentry and recovery services. So I'm the owner of the In Town, which is housing and reentry for men coming out of incarceration. I was a teacher for 5.5 years at the Stanley Prison and became aware of the huge need for housing and reentry programs. I retired from the DOC and bought the In Town about a year ago, and I've been learning something new every day since then. I'm also on the board of Roundtable Revival, a new nonprofit that supports recovery and reentry services. We had our first kickoff fundraiser on January 31st in an effort to raise money and awareness for one of our projects, a dry bar. This is an idea that came from the men at the In Town. We need a place that's not work and not home, but a third place that's alcohol-free, where a person can relax, socialize, and engage with that ease of association that is so important to the life of a community. Now, we had talked for months with Joe Luganbill about having the dry bar in the lobby of the State Theater and calling it the foyer. But a week before our fundraiser, which was going to be at the State, Joe let us know that everything was off. While this was a shock, we were able to recover quickly. JAMF stepped up to lend a hand and offered their 4th floor space, and the space was perfect for our needs. We had food and beverages from Just Local Food. We had an exceptional speaker named Tamara Oman. We showed the movie Knife Skills about people who had been involved with the justice system successfully opening a French restaurant in Cleveland, Ohio. A wide cross-section of people from the community came, and a good discussion ended the evening. So we're just beginning. We have to find a new location for the dry bar, either downtown or on Water Street. We probably need $50,000 to open the place. Right now, Professor Scott Lester's UWC class is working on a marketing plan for the dry bar. We also want to get our peer support services up and running. Peer support is the most successful way for a person who has made contact with the justice system to navigate the complexities of the system. Our goal is to provide support from intake court onward. We still need to raise $1,700 for insurance, and then our certified peer support specialist can start the negotiation process with Eau Claire County and the surrounding counties. Our third project is a 13-week mentoring program, partnering a person returning to the community with a community member. Each weekly session includes a meal, group sharing, an educational program, and individual mentoring. We plan to get that up and running in the fall. So that's where we are today in our effort to fill in the gaps for recovery and reentry. We believe public resources are better invested in opportunities for recovery and reentry than punishment and incarceration.
Thank you. We appreciate you coming up.
Okay.
Appreciate
Bill.
your comments. Is Jody still here? Jody Lepsch? No? How about Aaron Brewster? Looks like Aaron is gone. Crispin Pierce? No? All right. That's everyone. Was there anyone else that had hoped to speak in the public commentary portion of this meeting? All right, well, we appreciate, again, everyone's patience and help with our presentation, and we'll end our public hearing and discussion for this evening. We'll be going into closed session now, so we'll ask everyone to step out as soon as you're ready. So with that, on a motion by Councilmember Berge and seconded by Councilmember Lohr, the City Council will go into closed session and to provide direction to staff and discuss bargaining parameters for upcoming negotiations and the strategy to be employed in labor negotiations with Transit Union Local 1310, which is permitted in closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statutes 19.85. Does council have any discussion in regards to this going into closed session? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Anderson.
Aye.
Beaton. Aye. Berge.
Aye.
Christopherson.
Aye.
Emmanuel.
Aye.
Gragert.
Aye.
Lohr. Weld.
Aye. And we are in closed session.
The Eau Claire City Council meeting will return in a moment. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM. We now return you to the Eau Claire City Council meeting.
The Eau Claire City Council meeting is now in session. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilmember Anderson.
Here.
Beaton.
Here.
Berge.
Here.
Christopherson.
Here.
Emmanuel.
Here.
Gragert.
Here.
Klinkhammer. Lohr. Weld.
Here.
Worthman.
And good afternoon. Again, I welcome all of you for sharing this afternoon with us, and those of you at home too that are joining our meeting. Before we get started into the meeting itself, I would like to present to you our state of the city. And so I will get started with that, and once we're completed with the presentation, we'll move into our meeting. So again, good afternoon, and thank you all for allowing me this opportunity to present to you the Eau Claire state of the city. I would like to take a moment to thank our city council members. I'm honored to serve with this dedicated group of individuals and appreciative of the time, energy, and compassion that they put into serving this great city. My appreciation to Councilmember Worthman as well for his leadership as acting president for the first 4 months in 2019. Also, thank you to Mr. Peters and city staff for all your help on this presentation. As we know, municipal work can be thankless work at times, and the job of plowing streets, cleaning parks, filling potholes, or treating sewage can go unnoticed. But judging by the 2019 social media comments on the screen before you, it is sincerely appreciated. Noteworthy are 2 significant events in 2019 that city staff engaged head-on without missing a beat. First was the 113 inches of snow that required 35 days of operation, many 24-hour days back-to-back, and driving over 23,000 miles. This was a team effort with all employees from multiple departments pitching in. Second, we reopened our beautifully renovated City Hall, and moved 100 employees back without interrupting a single day of service. Our city also continued to receive national recognition in 2019, including one of the top 10 best college towns, one of the top 5 for affordable housing ownership, one of the top 100 places to live in the United States, and one of the best small cities in Wisconsin, to name a few. Scrolling on the screen is a collage of photos and experiences that showcase this community as we know and love it, and why so many individuals, families, and businesses are calling Eau Claire home. So let's get started. My message to you this afternoon reflects in our vision statement Eau Claire is a vibrant city with an exceptional quality of life and services. I hope to incorporate the objectives and goals from our strategic plan with the work, successes, and challenges this city experienced in 2019 and share with you our ambitions for 2020 and some of the goals we hope to attain. 2 years ago, we began our work with the futurist Rebecca Ryan to develop a values-based, nimble strategic plan. The shift from a traditional strategic plan to a values-based plan was significant. In 2019, we then worked to define the roles of City Council and City Manager, important work to achieve an efficient organization. So how does it work? As you can see from the graphic, it begins with the why, and the strategic broad goals set forth by City Council that focus on the highest priorities of the city and in turn accomplish the vision. From there is the what, and the objectives and statements that define the areas of focus that will help achieve the strategic goals. And lastly, the how, and the operational tasks or projects that staff is continually working on to achieve those objectives. Within our strategic plan are 4 strategic values: making Eau Claire a great city, local government and stewardship, we believe in sustainability, and we believe in equity. This afternoon we will talk about 2 of these, sustainability and equity. As you may recall, in 2018 we set a goal of being 100% renewable and 100% carbon-free by 2050. A bold and ambitious goal which at first glance seemed like a long way off, but to achieve requires action now. Our renewable energy plan, action plan that creates the roadmap for our current and future actions was developed this past year and is currently going through the final review process. This roadmap will influence capital and operating decisions that will help us achieve our energy goals. Thank you to Scott Allen and his staff, and particularly Ned Noel, for their work on this plan. This past year, we also signed an energy cooperation agreement with Xcel Energy, the first ever in the state of Wisconsin. We began work on an electric vehicle infrastructure plan to better support electric vehicles. In addition, this last year we recycled and reused 95% of the asphalt and concrete from street construction projects, as well as put 2 new hybrid buses online. Quality of life, it is sustainable. The second of our 4 strategic values is the concept of equity. When we look at equity and equality, it is important to understand how the 2 terms differ in our roles as individuals, employers, educators, and communities. To quickly summarize, equity and equality are 2 strategies we can use to produce fairness. Equity is providing what individuals need to be successful. Equality is treating everyone the same. Equity actively moves everyone closer to success by leveling the playing field. Equality aims to promote fairness, but it only can work if everyone starts from the same place and needs the same help. This picture tells the story. To help bring equity to the city of Eau Claire in 2019 and help level that playing field, we purchased 19 acres off of Jeffers Road with the intention of creating affordable housing for individuals with limited income. We are still in the planning stages, but our hope is to have a viable plan in place this summer. In addition, we set aside $500,000 in this year's budget to help further the efforts of creating affordable housing. Quality of life, it brings us together. Incorporated in our planning are the 7 strategic goals that are the what and the why, what, and how. The first of which is supporting economic prosperity for all with diverse, creative economic development and inclusive housing options. 2019 was another solid year for the economy in the Chippewa Valley. Our average unemployment rate was 2.7%, below both state and federal average. Wages are trending up, and we continue to have a net gain in jobs while employee turnover continues to trend down. Additionally, in 2019, we had $15.3 million in downtown investment, which brings our 5-year growth to almost $75 million. In 2019, our legal team successfully defended challenges to the creation of TID 10 and the amendment to TID 8 at the Wisconsin Court of Appeals and the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Thank you to Mr. Nick and our legal staff for their continued work. The collaborative work of the Chippewa Valley Regional Housing Task Force that began in 2018 and continued into 2019, where they concluded the first phase that included a 2-year action plan approved by this council. Also resulting from that work was the creation of the Housing Opportunities Commission. Quality of life, creating a sense of home. In addition, we adopted the new Cannery District Redevelopment Plan, which focuses on expanding economic opportunities in this area and rebranding it as the Makers District. Together with the work of Mr. Winzans and the Finance Department staff, TID 13 was created to help encourage future development. We also broke ground on the Cannery Trail Apartments, with Phase 1 now under construction and Phase 2 hoping to break ground later this year into 2021 with potential affordable housing options. Also key to economic prosperity is safe housing at all income levels. In 2018, we implemented a proactive housing inspection program, and in 2019, we inspected 1,054 units and responded to 209 complaints. We also addressed the housing safety issues at the Maples Community Mobile Home Park, with sensitivity to the needs of the current residents. Our work there still continues, and thank you to Lisa Giese and her staff and the health department and the community partners for their work to improve our community's health. Quality of life creates well-being. The community also participated in a 100-day sprint cycle to end homelessness that successfully housed 13 individuals experiencing chronic homelessness. Additional projects include a new landlord support program to increase rental opportunities for those with poor rental history or other barriers to secure stable housing. We also began the library expansion project, an exciting opportunity to bring our public library into the 21st century. In addition, the new community resource specialist who serves 744 individuals with housing and mental support. While looking at safe, functional, and accessible infrastructure, we have to recognize the reconstruction of State Street and the added roundabouts. I hope we can all agree that the results have met or exceeded our expectations along the State Street corridor. Traffic may flow a little slower, but it is continuous, and in the end, gets us to our destination sooner and in a safer environment. In 2019, our city engineering staff raised the bar on educating and engaging the community around outside-the-box, non-traditional thinking, encompassing the many complete street approaches to planning, designing, and operating roadways and right-of-ways with all users in mind to make the transportation network safer and more efficient. Thank you to our engineering staff for all their great work. Quality of life is innovation. Shifting our attention to winter again, record snowfall in 2019 forced us to reevaluate the parking policy in place at that time. The inability to provide clear and safe passage through our neighborhoods was a serious concern. In response, we reintroduced odd-even parking with the intention of creating a safer environment for our pedestrians, automobiles, snowplows, and emergency vehicles. In 2019, the work in public engagement continued with the new transit center. The 7-story, $23 million project will include parking, workforce rent housing, and commercial space. In addition, our transit division secured funding for 8 new bus shelters and 25 bus stop improvements over the next 5 years. In 2019, we facilitated 107 lead water service replacements and approved plans to continue that valued service for many years to come. Thank you to Mr. Pippinger and the community services staff for all that you do. Other capital improvements throughout 2019 included the opening of the beautiful Haymarket Plaza and the completion of a $1.75 million upgrade to Hobbs Ice Center. An important aspect of having safe, accessible, and functional infrastructure is taking care of what we have. Last year, we exercised and tested 5,617 water valves. We also swept 14,000 miles of streets, collecting 11,000 cubic yards of material. Quality of life, it shows. We also continued our work to upgrade our streets and alleys, a long multi-year process And over the past 24 years, the percentage of excellent streets went from 28% to 34%. But the real progress was reducing the number of fair and poor streets from 39% down to only 7% in 2019. We also maintained and repaired more than 32 miles of recreational trails in the city of Eau Claire. The only other city with more miles of recreation trails in this state is Madison. Quality of life, it improves health. In optimizing the city's organizational potential, 2019 brought about numerous personnel changes and challenges within the organization. Over the years, the city of Eau Claire has continually been successful in employee retention, but with record low unemployment, levy constraints handcuffing municipalities from offering competitive wages, and an approximate 50% turnover in the baby boomer-led municipal workforce, staffing has been and will continue to be a priority. Thank you to Ms. Selton and the HR staff for all their work. Several employees were recognized on the national and state levels. Dave Solberg and our engineering team were recognized for the design of the Carson Park Causeway by the American Public Works Association as the nation's best public works project of the year. Congratulations to Dave and his staff. Our Deputy City Attorney, Doug Hofer, was recognized as a leader in the law, and there was internal recognition for the employees across many departments that stepped up to help remove the record amount of snow. Quality of life brings success. And of course, city staff still had fun. A strong, vibrant, and healthy city must have strong, vibrant, and healthy neighborhoods, places where people feel connected and safe. 2019 welcomed several new neighborhood associations and the city's first annual Neighborhood Summit that provided residents an opportunity to ask questions, express ideas, successes, and frustrations. A sense of unity, support, and confidence resulted from this event. Thank you to the residents, city staff, and to council members for your work. In between their busy roles protecting and serving the Eau Claire Police Department actively participated in 74 neighborhood association meetings last year. Thank you to retired Chief Ski and Chief Rokas and our entire law enforcement staff for their commitment to our neighborhoods and connecting our residents to law enforcement personnel. Quality of life builds trust. In addition, our City-County Health Department worked alongside the City Attorney's Office, the Eau Claire Police Department, the University of Wisconsin, Eau Claire students and administration, and other community stakeholders to pass and implement the excessive intoxication ordinance and explore policy and educational opportunities that will impact unsafe, excessive alcohol use. With this ordinance, a diversion program was developed to provide education and self-reflection with the hope of changing behavior and community culture here in Eau Claire. And last year, our police department developed a lethality assessment for domestic abuse victims to identify our higher risk victims and help connect 56 of those victims with advocacy and services in order to reduce future victimization. Our fire department implemented a fire safety and risk reduction program for our senior citizens by working collaboratively with our other governmental and nonprofit agencies. Thank you to our fire department for their work to respond during times of emergency. In 2019, our engaged community continued with the training and development of those chairing and serving on the 23 boards, commissions, and committees that help shape and serve this city. Our challenge now is the recruitment of Eau Claire residents to help serve in these roles. Presently, we have 21 vacant seats to be filled, and even more will be needed to replenish our resource bank when future vacancies arise. Please let me take 1 minute to challenge all of us here and all of those at home to encourage our friends and neighbors, co-workers, and employees to become engaged with our community, to serve the city on a board, a commission, or committee with the understanding that your voice and your work is heard and it is acted upon. There's no better opportunity to get back to your community and to make a difference. To continue the support, community engagement, the City Council approved Wisconsin's first formal participatory budgeting process, and work on that begins soon. In addition, the State Street project showed us community engagement in action. Not only did this project bring about an outpouring of public comment and input, but it also brought attention to the value of neighborhood associations and the impact of their role in this community by encouraging neighbors and community partners to listen and communicate more openly. Quality of life through sharing. Eau Claire has enjoyed an exceptional rate of volunteerism. Over 80% of the residents in the 2019 survey said that they volunteer in some capacity, with 1,265 individuals providing 5,500 hours of service. We also expanded our early voting by adding more days and evening hours for the community. Let's bring our attention to livable, lovable, and fun, our sixth strategic goal. In 2019, we became one of 3 Winter Vanguard cities to participate in Winter Mission, a collaborative effort to combat social isolation and increase levels of physical activity, working together with all of our community partners to make Eau Claire a great winter city. Our Recreation Division registered over 10,000 participants in 2019 and coordinated over 100 special events and welcomed 12,000 spectators at the Winter Parade. Quality of life is livable, lovable, and fun. When we look at 2019 and the opportunities for personal learning, we have to recognize the L.E. Phillips Memorial Library, Director Westby, and the entire library staff for being awarded the Wisconsin Libraries Association 2019 Library of the Year. What a wonderful honor for them and for this community. Other notable library achievements include a new outreach program encompassing youth services that visited 5 parks throughout the city with a variety of books and things to play with. In addition, the continuation of the Books on the Bus program and the Summer Library program, both of which continue to be popular and successful programs for our community. Quality of life for our children. Our quality of life does not happen without collaborations that have become the lifeblood of Eau Claire and allowing us to do together what we can't do alone. We have a long history of successful collaborations, and in 2019 welcomed a joint effort with Chippewa County to build a shared industrial park, the Eau Claire Police Department and Mayo Clinic, our EMS agreement with the surrounding towns and villages, and our work with Fierce Freedom, the University Internship Program, the Regional Computer Forensic Lab, Regional Task Force on Affordable Housing, Winter Mission, and more. Alongside those collaborations, the city continues to partner with our neighborhoods, organizations, and service groups with MOUs to enhance our parks and public spaces. Examples include the Chippewa Valley Pickleball Club, the Eau Claire Express Baseball, and the newly created Princeton Valley Park. Quality of life is working together. Yet with all this success and progress, there are challenges to our ability to improve the quality of life in Eau Claire. Levy limits tire tax revenue to net new construction, meaning that we need $110 million of new net taxable value to have a 2% increase in revenue. And that $110 million comes with new demands for services. This formula for growth is not sustainable and has created an environment where the city of Eau Claire has fewer employers today than we did in 1980. Yet by every measure, we are 30% larger. In addition, like most cities, we are challenged by access to safe, affordable housing for all people at all levels. Although as a percent of income we do well for home ownership, we also have the second highest county poverty rate in the state. Other challenges include attracting more employers to offer higher wages that want to capitalize on the quality of life that we've created, and addressing the growing inventory of vacant retail buildings in our community, and working with area leaders to hopefully find alternative uses for these buildings. So what do we have planned for 2020 and beyond? We are already off and running in 2020, and first and foremost, will be the continuing effort to meet the needs of this community as we work towards attaining the goals and objectives of our strategic plan. Second, we need to fill the vacated city manager's position. Recently, we took steps to secure a consultant to help facilitate a national search. Our intention is to attract diverse, qualified, and experienced applicants that share the values and goals of this community. We are committed to including you, the residents of Eau Claire, city staff, and community partners in the search and selection of our next city manager. I am confident that it will be a smooth and positive transition. Obviously, we still have our foot on the gas pedal regarding the challenge of safe, healthy, and affordable housing in this community. We are committed to remaining active and engaged with our community partners to keep building, renovating, and revitalizing our housing stock. In 2020, we'll continue to work on our strategic plan by incorporating key performance indicators for each strategic objective. We also need to prioritize the work and implement software that will publicly and internally track our progress. We also need to keep our focus on the future development of a convention center, supporting the library expansion project, implementing participatory budgeting, breaking ground on the transit transfer center, and the need for more industrial land, just to name a few of the things that we have on our calendar. And as many of you know, a letter of intent was signed to guide a partnership between the City of Eau Claire, the University, Visit Eau Claire, and the Eau Claire Community Complex for the expanded event center on Menominee Street. They hope to break ground later this summer. And as we look forward, you have heard throughout this presentation the constraints that levy limits put on this community and our quality of life. For 2020 and beyond, this will be our greatest challenge if we are to continue to meet the needs of this city in a manner that is representative of the values and services that we have come to expect. Soon as a community, we will need to have a discussion on how we find a sustainable solution to this challenge. In closing, I would like to thank our incredible city staff that continues to wow us with their creativity, dedication, and passion. Thank you again to my fellow council members, and of course, a sincere thanks to City Manager Peters, who will be greatly missed. And to the residents of Eau Claire, our biggest thanks. You helped make 2019 an amazing year, a year of listening and learning, growth and sustainability, empathy and celebration. You are a community that doesn't sit still, you take nothing for granted, and you leave no one behind. You should be proud of who you are and what you strive for the city to be. And I'm confident that 2020 will bring more triumphs and greater quality of life for this community. With new faces in our neighborhoods, new businesses and jobs, healthy and affordable housing for everyone, and continued respect for one another. Thank you. Again, I appreciate that opportunity. Obviously, there's a lot floating around here on our council desk are a list of accomplishments. I know that those are available if anyone wishes to take a look at those. It's 2 pages, and that's just a part of what this community has completed and worked on this past year in 2019. So again, thank you for helping me, allowing me that opportunity. So we'll get started with the consent agenda. Is council, I'm sorry. Let me just read through some protocol first, and then we'll get started. Thank you, and welcome to our Tuesday, February 25th legislative session of the Eau Claire City Council. During its legislative session, the council deliberates and takes action on agenda items before us today. City staff and council members have spent a great deal of time preparing for this meeting. Thank you to the residents that joined us last night for your comments and thoughts during our public hearings, and also those that reached out to us today. Thank you to Valley Media Works for live streaming this meeting. To watch, please visit valleymediaworks.org or visit channel 994 on Spectrum Cable. We have a full agenda, so we'll get started. First item of business is the consent agenda. As a note, to those who are here this evening with an item that is on the consent agenda, just know that we will take just one vote. If everything is approved as is, then know that your item has been approved as well. Do council members have any questions regarding the consent agenda or have any wish to remove any item for separate consideration? Seeing none, then on a motion by Councilmember Berge and seconded by Councilmember Lohr, the consent agenda is moved. Is there any discussion? Council Vice President Emanuel.
Thank you, Council President Weld. I just want to lift up one of the applications that we have here, and I know that every single one of them is meritorious and has value in our community. But in particular, the air show, I want to thank Mr. Tim Olson, who I see is here tonight, and to all of the youth and the parents, and to the person Mr. Olson is pointing to. I'm sorry, I don't know your first name. But this is more than an air show. This is around getting hundreds of volunteers in place, including many, many youth and their families to help successfully activate this air show. It is a sense of pride, joy, and hard work to bring this forth. So I just want to lift up that this is more than an application. I know that goes for every single applicant who applies. There's so much work behind here. And then one weekend, it becomes a sense of pride with coordination, great coordination from our city with law enforcement and our medical community to make sure that everything operates very smoothly. So I just want to say I appreciate this work. It's important. And just thank you very much.
Any other discussion in regards to the consent agenda? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Anderson.
Aye.
Beaton.
Aye.
Berge.
Aye.
Christofferson.
Aye.
Emmanuel.
Aye.
Gregert.
Aye.
Lohr.
Aye.
Weld.
Aye. And the consent agenda has been passed. There was one proclamation in our packet which was inadvertently added. That item will be presented in our March 10th meeting, and our apologies for that. The business agenda, though, we'll get started on and begin with agenda item number 14, a resolution final resolution approving the project and levying special assessments for street and utility improvements on the following streets: Oxford Avenue to Platt Street, to Maxon Street, to Bellinger Street. Does council have any additional questions for Mr. Solberg in regards to this street project? Councilmember Gregor.
Yeah, thank you, President Weld. Yeah, just maybe a couple questions for Mr. Solberg about Oxford Avenue and Maxon Street.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Solberg. I guess, one of the things that we're seeing in front of us right now is on the top is the kind of the southern portion of Oxford Avenue. And I see kind of a little bit of a bump out where the bus stop is by the Quick Trip on the west side of the road.
Correct.
Is that what that is intending to be?
Correct, a crossing,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, so just to clarify, I see a crosswalk, and then a little bit down to the south of that is there's a little bit of a bump out of the sidewalk or something right there.
At this
yeah.
location? That is where there will be an Xcel Energy pole for the relocated electrical. So that's the only place in the right-of-way that it would fit. So it's a rather large pole, so the utilities that are going north-south will actually go east-west of this location. So to get everything to fit in there, that's why that wavers like that.
Okay. I guess just as a follow-up to that, is the bus stop going to be located there, or exactly?
The transit stop is located in the Maxon Street area. currently. So I was talking with our transit manager. He did, last year we received funds for transit shelters throughout the city. And this is one location that he's identified as being one of the points of having a transit shelter located. So it was relocated from further down on, the stop was relocated from further down on Oxford, I believe it was in this location here, and it's currently up in this location.
Okay, just another clarification on that. So for the bus route 8, when it's going south, kind of its inbound trip, it has a stop right now right by the Quick Trip on the other side of the street than what you just described. So I was trying to figure out if that one is moving at all.
I'm not familiar with the southbound stop for that. We're looking at this location for that would have the shelter with it, so.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions for Mr. Solberg?
I had one more.
Certainly. Councilmember Gregor.
Thank you, President Weld. The issue of the crosswalk, there only being one to cross from Maxon Street to, to like the Bring Project area. I know I've had a little bit more ideas, I guess I've shared via email about that. So I guess I wanted to get your current thinking on whether it would be feasible to put a crosswalk from the southern sidewalk of Maxon Street to the Brewing Project, because that's essentially where that lines up with the door to the Brewing Project and also lines up with the apartment building.
So at this location here, the driveway for the Brewing Project was specified with a width and a location when it was approved at Plan Commission. So I reached out to the property owner and did not hear back today. It would take, it was approved for that, so without property owner consent to reduce it, that's what their approved site plan contains. As far as shifting it further down, it perfectly lines up with their drive aisles in the parking lot, and it would make it less efficient of a parking lot to shift it down, which is why it was located where it was. As far as having a crosswalk coming across here, you can see where it does come into the corner of that intersection, or the driveway. So we had figured with the crosswalk at this location, it would provide on an arterial street a little separation from the conflicts and the distractions you have with a driveway. And as the Cannery District grows, there is a large point of demand right now at this location. But as this develops, this corner develops, and there are further destinations across the road and down the street, usage would be established with the one crosswalk. We probably would have looked at it if the driveway wasn't there, but realistically, you either widen out the driveway even further, or if the crosswalk moves to the south to miss the driveway on this location, then you're removing some of the on-street parking that we tried to get on the street. So it was kind of a tough intersection with that.
Yeah, I guess, so I follow up to that. The, I know we've designed streets before where there's a crosswalk that goes to the edge of a driveway, like on 2nd Avenue over by the jail. There's a public parking lot that was done, and that was on a street that, like, all the options were available to avoid that. And obviously we have more restrictions here, but and it's not ideal to design it in this way, but just, would you recommend not doing this essentially, or not doing a crosswalk there?
I feel comfortable with the single crosswalk the way it's shown on here. The one on 2nd that you had sent the picture of, that was the single crosswalk. It didn't have another crosswalk that was 30 or 40 feet away from it, is the other difference. I don't know with transit, if talking with our transit manager, and if they stop here and the crosswalk goes, it would be in front of the bus to go to other points. I don't know how that would rate, if the transit if the transit stop would not be as desirable, if they would move it further down for secondary effects. But I think with one crosswalk where we have the bump outs like that, I think is adequate. Certainly if it was the council's wishes to add one at this location, there is the precedence on Second Avenue, but it's a little different because there isn't one right next to it. It's the only one that's kind of crossing between on there. And I don't know exactly why they chose to have it that close instead of separating it by 20 feet or so. So that was kind of our thinking for this location here.
Any other discussion or questions for Mr. Solberg? Thank you for coming up. Any other discussion in regards to the agenda item? Councilmember McGregor.
Thank you, President Weld. I appreciate everybody's time focused on this. I do want to talk a bit about what I think would be a benefit to amend the project to include Sharrows. So I do actually have a motion to do that I can pass around as well. So yeah, I motion to amend to add Sharrows onto the Oxford Avenue from Platt Street to Madison Street. And if I have a second, I can explain.
I'll second.
Oh, thanks.
City Attorney Nick.
Just need a main motion and second.
So we have a motion for an amendment, and we have a second. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Okay, we didn't.
On a motion by Councilmember Christopherson and seconded by Councilmember Gregor, this item is moved. And then we have a motion for an amendment by Councilmember Gregor and seconded by Councilmember Beaton. Is there any discussion, or would you care to share more thoughts on your amendment?
Yeah, thank you, President Weld. I would like to, the reason for my motion to add Sharrows is that in our packet we have Sharrows recommended by the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and also in their December minutes there was a discussion that the plan was to include Sharrows as well. So that was kind of the understanding when I was speaking with the chair of the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, Mr. Salmon. Essentially, the reason why I think they're necessary is because the trail, while it does parallel this area, it's not a super accessible trail right now. There's no way to ride a bike to it on an actual bicycle-focused facility other than on the north end at the High Bridge. Obviously, a lot of that is going to change, and next year we'll have a Madison Street underpass. But really, anyone who's coming from the west does not necessarily yet have access to that trail, even after that Madison Street underpass exists, because there's no real way to pass through the Brewing Project area on a city right-of-way yet. So that's one reason. Also, there's an apartment building being proposed, and there's going to be a lot of other development that I think is going to drive, just as, well, basically it's going to drive demand from bicyclists to visit that area. And essentially what a Sharrow does, it's a share the road symbol that indicates to the drivers that bicyclists belong in the street, and also in the way the street is being designed, their only safe way of operating on the street is to take the lane of traffic, because it's a pretty narrow road. And also it indicates to the bicyclists where they are most safely to ride, and not on the sidewalks or things like that. So it kind of helps. It's kind of a cue to drivers and bicyclists. So obviously we also had a resident come and speak about feeling that we could do more to make it a bike-friendly district, and obviously a lot is being done to make it pedestrian-friendly, but I think this adds an extra element. So that's my explanation.
Any other discussion in regards to the amendment? Councilmember Vice President Emmanuel.
Thank you, Council President Weldon. I have to get my pun out of my system. I'd like to share why I think this is important. In all seriousness, this is a communication, right? So we're building a new part of our community and revitalizing it, and the Sharrow truly is a communication element. Because we have limited space with the road, the vehicles, as I understand it, act as a traffic calming device. So ideally, you'd get the cars out of there and you wouldn't maybe need this additional communication for bicyclists. However, there is a utility to have the vehicles on the road, and we want to make this inviting for all modes of transportation. I also will be supporting this with a sense of responsibility for future budgets, knowing that this not only changes this nominally, but it's going to, now we're making a commitment, a communication commitment going forward for when these roads get improved. And I don't take that lightly. I think what that shows is, to me, is putting a value on the communication, that it's worth it to make sure that we're trying to increase and make more accessible bicycling in our community, and in particular, striving to move from our status right now as a bronze city as far as bicycle recommendations go, and working towards that next level of silver city. So it's a good example of how one improvement has lots of different implications, and at the end of the day, one I certainly think is worth.
Thank you. Any other discussion in regards to the amendment? Councilmember Christopherson.
Thank you, President Weld. I want to thank Councilmember Gregert for being such a consistent and persistent advocate for bicycling. It's an interesting lesson to all of us to see how you focus on informing the public and informing government about a particular segment of our users. So thank you in all ways. I would also like to simply say that I'm interested to watch how this moves into utilization if this amendment is passed, because that's a really heavily used intersection, hoping to move the arterial car traffic to Bellinger with a bike path along the river. I just see that there could be a lot of confusion, in which case this is a very important aspect for us to put that instruction right on the roadway. So thank you for taking the time to move that forward. But I think this is my neighborhood, and I'll just be watching to see how bicyclists use it and find their way around a really challenging intersection. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Christopherson. Any other discussion in regards to the amendment? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Beaton?
Aye.
Berge?
Aye.
Christopherson?
Aye.
Emmanuel?
Aye.
Gregert?
Aye.
Lohr? Weld?
Aye.
Anderson?
Aye.
And that item passes unanimously. Agenda item number 15 is a resolution ordering sidewalk to be repaired in accordance with Wisconsin statute. I'm sorry. All right, I'll get all back together here. We're still on agenda item number 14. So we have a resolution with an amendment. Councilmember Gregert. Is there any discussion in regards to agenda item number 14 with the amendment? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll. I'm sorry, one. Councilmember Berge? No? Okay.
That's me. That's me.
Councilmember Christopherson.
Thank you, President Weld. I'm sorry, but I have to say again that since this is very near my neighborhood and it's the maker's space in the cannery district, I'm very appreciative of the sensitivity that the engineering department has used in the aesthetics of this. I was very impressed with the grates that use the tree roots to cleanse water coming off the street into the river. I'm always just amazed at the many aspects that staff uses to up the quality of what we're putting into our community. So I'm really pleased to be able to support this.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Bergy.
Aye.
Christopherson.
Aye.
Emmanuel.
Aye.
Gregert.
Aye.
Flor.
Aye.
Weld.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Beaton.
Aye.
And that item passes unanimously. Agenda item number 15 is a resolution ordering sidewalk to be repaired in accordance with Wisconsin statute section 66.0907 on the following streets: Oxford Avenue to Platt Street and Maxon Street to Bellinger Street. Does council have any additional questions for Mr. Solberg in regards to this agenda item? Seeing none, then on a motion by Councilmember Emmanuel and seconded by Councilmember Beaton, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Christopherson.
Aye.
Emmanuel.
Aye.
Gregert.
Aye.
Flor.
Aye.
Weld.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Beaton.
Aye.
Bergy.
Aye.
And that item passes unanimously. Agenda item number 16 is a resolution ordering the repair of citywide sidewalk and curb and gutter according to section 66.0907 Wisconsin statutes at 25 locations, beginning with 605 South Dewey Street. Does council have any questions for Mr. Solberg? I would like Mr. Solberg to come up. Council Vice President Emmanuel.
Thank you, Council President Weld. Thank you, Mr. Solberg, and also Mr. Wizens and Mr. Peters for helping to organize correspondence to council, and was able to read since we started our meeting today. If I understand the correspondence correctly, the red lines are slated for this year.
Correct.
And all in the blue would be identified for next year.
Correct.
Okay, and then according to inquiry, there is no record on file that says that there's agreed upon deferment with development agreement, so we don't have a deferment on record for these gaps, is that correct?
Yeah, once the development agreements were adopted that contained that original deferment till the house is constructed on it, or 10 years, there haven't been any subsequent when a house has been built requesting the sidewalk to not be constructed that we have in our records.
I will have a question for you, but is there any other information that you want council to know?
I guess the reason, so yesterday was brought up that the sidewalk in red here did not connect to anything, and there is sidewalk on adjacent sections at this location and then across the street, and it goes through the subdivision. You can see the subdivision there are main routes that go north, south through here, so it does serve a purpose and it doesn't end up in a dead end. And then the blue was reported to us as a gap in the system in the neighborhood after we had received the red, so that's why it's on next year's instead of in this year's packet. They were different times that we were alerted to those deficiencies in the sidewalk system. Below, I include in the packet as well, these were the displays that are included in our development agreements, and it spells out where sidewalks were required by the city council at the time the development agreement was approved. And the parcels in question are in this location here, and they were required by the city council in April of 2004 to have sidewalk at that time. So this was the original edict that kind of brought the sidewalks forward, and then we're following up because they haven't been constructed since then.
Thank you. My question for you is, do you feel administratively, if council were to say, let's take the portion that's in red and put it onto 2021's repair list, would you have any concerns about that?
If for giving direction to construct them in 21 and approve them with the sidewalks today, or?
I think we'd have to work out the mechanics. I'm not sure if we kind of just say we deny this and then you take that as a directive to include that in 2021, or if we say, that we want to compel this for 2021. But aside from the mechanics, administratively and kind of logically, do you have any concerns about that as a city engineer?
No, we would be able to include those in construction in 21. It's not uncommon for our citywide sidewalk repair program. It's patchwork, it's filler work for contractors typically. So it's not uncommon for work that's bid in 1 year to be wrapped up the following spring if the contractors get really busy. So if it was the wish of the council and the list of sidewalks were approved now, and it was the desire to construct those next year with the remaining portions in the subdivision. If the council at that time approves those remaining portions, administratively, we could include those in contracts. That wouldn't cause a problem.
And may I ask one more question? And I want to defer to Councilmember Christopherson, who I think looked like had some correspondence with one of our citizens that came out. Just from a logistical standpoint, what would be the cleanest way to kind of back out this property that's indicated in the red? Would it just be to strike out that address on the list?
I guess it would, for us, this is the second year that we've included it in the list. For us, it would be easiest if it was included with as a sidewalk being required by the council with directive to construct it next year with the rest of those.
Okay.
Then, otherwise, we'll be having another hearing with these same, and we had a hearing last night to discuss those.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm eager to hear other comments.
Councilmember Beaton.
Thank you. There was something that you said last night that I didn't quite understand, and I just wanted to confirm. Are the two homeowners adjacent to that red line, the project area, are they responsible for covering part of the cost of the construction?
They are not. The property owner that has the larger portion of sidewalk was on the list last year. In our special assessment policy, if you have a residential lot and you have street construction, you only pay for special assessments where your driveway comes out of your address. So in this case, if we reconstructed the street where the sidewalk was, he wouldn't receive special assessments for that. But our sidewalk policy didn't spell that out, and our alley assessments didn't treat residential corner properties like that. So the special assessment policy was modified last year and adopted by council to treat sidewalks like streets for corner residential properties. So because of that, they have sidewalk along the front of their property where their address is. So this would not be assessed for sidewalk, and it is not assessed for sidewalk under this program. This is an irregular shaped lot here. So whenever we have an irregular shaped lot, we divide the square footage of the lot by 132 feet for a standard city lot depth. And it comes up with 170 feet of frontage at a standard city width, and they have that length of sidewalk already included. So if it was a street assessment or sidewalk, they wouldn't be assessed for that little extra because of the irregular shape of their lot. So they're not receiving assessments for the concrete work or the restoration for these parcels.
Okay, so zero financial implications for them?
For our street project, if they have sprinklers that are in there, then sprinklers that are located in the boulevard area in the right-of-way for streets are the homeowner's responsibility to remove and accommodate during construction.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for Mr. Solberg? Thank you very much. On a motion then by Councilmember Anderson, seconded by Councilmember Berge, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Christopherson.
Thank you, President Weld. I would like to amend in relationship to the questions that Councilmember Emmanuel was asking. I would like to amend this to indicate that we approve all of these for construction, but that the Staling and Vang sections be constructed in 2021.
We have a motion and a second. Would you care to speak to
I would like to. I have had extensive conversation with Mr. Staling, and I want to thank he and his wife for testimony last night, because I think it really brings to light some of the confusion and difficulty there is when you have a development that is closed, but you have sidewalk that follows years and years later. His concern was, first of all, the surprise that last year when he was on the list of wondering why he didn't know that sidewalk would be installed because he had put these sprinklers in, and that was the expense that he was concerned about last night. And then this year to come forward again and wonder if it would be this, somebody would come just within a couple of days and he wouldn't have time to move his sprinklers. So it was all of that coordination, and I've had this same kind of conversation with other residents in my district that are in established developments and then have these surprises. So I'm really grateful for the way Mr. Solberg has provided information. But having spoken with this constituent, this absolutely meets his concerns and is satisfactory, especially seeing that these other lots are on the docket for next summer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Christopherson. Any other discussion in regards to the amendment? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Emmanuel,
Aye.
Greigert,
Aye.
Lohr, Weld,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Bergy,
Aye.
Christopherson.
Aye.
And that amendment passes. Back to the original resolution. Is there any additional discussion in that regard? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Greigert,
Aye.
Lohr,
Aye.
Weld,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Bergy,
Aye.
Christopherson,
Aye.
Emmanuel.
Aye.
And that item passes unanimously. Agenda item number 17 is a resolution authorizing the fire department to apply for and accept grant monies from the Wisconsin Division of Emergency Management for the purchase of hazardous materials, radiological detection equipment. Because this item amends the budget, a 2/3 vote of the elected members or 8 affirmative votes is required for adoption. Good afternoon, Mr. Bertrand.
Good afternoon. This grant that we're applying for is a $62,000 grant that would allow us to buy a meter for our hazardous materials team. We are one of 2 Type 1 hazardous materials teams for the state of Wisconsin. This equipment serves that purpose. It serves us here in the city of Eau Claire and Eau Claire County. This is a no-match grant in the sense that once we apply for and receive the money, we will make the purchase and then be reimbursed by the state of Wisconsin. We have a very high likelihood of getting this grant, so I'm just asking for permission to apply for and accept the money once it is granted to us.
Any questions for Mr. Bertrand from council? I don't see any. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. So on a motion by Councilmember Lohr and seconded by Councilmember Christopherson, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Lohr,
Aye.
Weld,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Bergy,
Aye.
Christopherson,
Aye.
Emmanuel,
Aye.
Greigert.
Aye.
And that item passes unanimously. Agenda item number 18 is a resolution authorizing the sale of 559 North Hastings Way, former fire station number 10. Good afternoon, Ms. Basin.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Before you is a resolution that would authorize the sale of the former Fire Station 10 located at 559 North Hastings Way on the corner of Birch Street and Hastings Way. An appraisal was completed on the property by J.C. Norby and Associates in 2017 and gave a fair market value of $365,000. Subsequently, we had asbestos testing performed in August of 2019, which did find asbestos in various areas of the building, which the new owner may need to remediate. A request for proposals was issued in November of 2019. We received 2. A summary of those proposals was provided in the packet. One of the proposals we received was from SV Metalworks, Inc. That was a favorable proposal by staff for $225,000 purchase price. He would be looking at relocating his Outlaw Auto Sales and adding a detail service and rentable office space. Are there any questions?
Any questions from council? I don't see any. Thank you. So on a motion by Councilmember Gregor and seconded by Council Vice President Emmanuel, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Weld,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Bergy,
Aye.
Christofferson,
Aye.
Emmanuel,
Aye.
Gregert,
Aye.
Lohr.
Aye.
And that item passes unanimously. Agenda item number 19 is a resolution authorizing city staff to reject proposals from the city-owned property at 559 North Hastings Way, former Fire Station number 10. Ms. Basin.
The resolution before you was a postponed item from the August 13th, 2019 meeting. And the resolution that we just authorized the sale of the Fire Station 10 to SV Metalworks, Inc. So with this resolution, we'd be looking for City Council to reject the proposals.
Any questions from council? I don't see any.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming up. So on a motion by Councilmember Beaton and seconded by Councilmember Anderson, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Anderson,
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Bergy,
Aye.
Christofferson,
Aye.
Emmanuel,
Aye.
Gregert,
Aye.
Lohr,
Aye.
Weld.
Aye. And that item passes unanimously. Agenda item number 20 is a resolution adopting the Renewable Energy Action Plan and its sub-action plans. Does council have any questions? Mr. Noel is not with us tonight, but Mr. Ivory is, and then also Patrick Ritchie, who is the intern that helped Mr. Noel throughout the preparing of this project. So does council have any questions for any of those staff members? Seeing none, then on a motion by Councilmember Bergy and seconded by Councilmember Lohr, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Christofferson.
Thank you, President Weld. I simply want to say it's a beautiful document, broad and deep, and it's an item for the city to be very proud of, to have produced that, and then to begin implementation. And then regarding, there was a very effective and significant presentation in front of the Plan Commission at the end of January, so that if viewers wanted to look at that, and I'm certain that there'll be other presentations in the community as it rolls out, but it's really worthy of seeing and being able to question staff on what's been produced. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Christofferson. Any other? Councilmember Beaton.
Thank you. I would like to also add my thanks to city staff and all of the citizens who participated in this. I've gushed about this before, but I need my one last opportunity to do it. To think that this document is going to guide us for the next 10 years through our journey into a community that is practically like unrecognizable is so incredible. This is only 1/3 of that journey too, and it's our big first step. And I feel incredibly proud to be a part of a community, especially a young person, a part of a community that has taken such bold steps to ensure a safe and healthy future for everybody. And I just wanted to thank this council for the support of that, and everyone involved. Truly thankful for everything, and really proud. Thanks.
Councilmember Gregor.
Thank you, President Weld. Yeah, I also kind of want to echo those comments. I think, you know, the focus of this plan is on the next 10 years, but obviously there's elements of it that are focusing on the next 30. You know, to match our 100% renewable energy and carbon neutrality goal by 2050. And, you know, there's all these companion parts of the plan: electric vehicle roadmap, net zero energy design guide for buildings, solar ready guidelines. You know, these are real models for other communities, and Mr. Noel has really taken the lead on this for our city for over 10 years now, I believe, is really to be commended for it. And, you know, he's been a mentor to other cities and communities across the state too, and I think that's a really important thing that our city is leading on, and providing that, you know, some of our staff time as a resource too. Xcel Energy as a partner, and, you know, interns like Mr. Ritchie and our council members, Beaton and Worthman, who served on the committee. It's just great to see all this work put together, and seeing these ways that we can step up as a city as well as a community in the private sector to match these goals. I think one of the significant parts of the document that will be interesting to see how it fleshes out in our budget process and our priority setting and our strategic plan is, you know, how we're going to staff this, and how we're going to be able to support the community and the like joining us in the private sector on this. So some of it's education, some of it's expertise, and you know, I think you know, some of the biggest challenges are going to be one, the building sector, where we have a lot of buildings already, obviously, and the Net Zero Energy Design Guide can help us with new buildings, but also with existing buildings, which I appreciated that. But there's pieces that I think the plan didn't really go into very much detail, like what we're going to do about heating buildings with natural gas, and what's the future of natural gas. And Xcel Energy can hopefully help us answer some of those questions, but their commitment, you know, is focused on their electricity sector and not so much on natural gas. So I'm curious as to what's going to happen with that. And then another big area of challenge is going to be transportation, where we see that becoming a bigger part of the overall pie of our emissions as a planet. And, you know, we have some goals for, you know, electrifying transportation, but there's a lot of these equity pieces that come along with that, where we might not necessarily be able to, you know, we're going to have options for people that don't have the money to afford an electric car or things like that. So expanding transit, you know, helping educate people about how to ride the bus and making sure we have good information about that. And so there's kind of a big education component of it, where it's in the transportation sector, it's not as simple as waiting until Xcel Energy decarbonizes the grid when you turn the light on and not have to worry about it anymore as much, at least. The transportation sector, I think, is a lot more difficult, where you have to, like, maybe ride your bike to work a few times a week instead of driving or something, in order to really reduce your carbon footprint in a meaningful way. So I appreciate how the plan starts to dive into that. One of the things that Mr. Noel was really good at was taking ideas throughout the year that this was being done. And I sat down with him, and one of my ideas was adding a goal on page 68, actually, who added it in, where we're setting a goal to become a gold level, gold designated bicycle friendly community through the League of American Bicyclists by the year 2030. And right now we're at bronze. We just applied, and we did not get silver, but incrementally we could get silver maybe in the next application, and then by 2030 get the gold designation. And Mr. Ivory helped with, you know, that, or has been working on those designation applications in the past. So hopefully we can do that. Just an example of how this, I think, has been a flexible process. And I do have one amendment where I want to continue that flexibility. So, after that long introduction. So my amendment would be to acknowledge some of the public comment we received yesterday, and obviously a reason why we have public hearings is so we can make, even strengthen a really strong plan. So this idea is to evaluate certification as a Bee City USA as part of the biodiversity section. So I'd make that motion to add Bee City USA as something to consider.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second by Councilmember Beaton. Would you care to speak to
Yeah, just really briefly. Essentially, we had, three, pollinator protectors. I'm not sure what the term would be. Pollinator protectors here, where they were focused on, how we can make sure pollinators are a part of how we address the variety of environmental issues that are mentioned in this plan. And I think that it fits really well with the biodiversity section. And it sounds like there's a lot of different people that would be willing to help with that, folks from the DNR and folks from CVTC. And so that's why I'm proposing this, is something we could explore in the future. It doesn't necessarily lock us down to doing it, but it just puts it among the hundreds of ideas in the plan. So.
Councilmember Beaton?
Thank you. I'd just add that our comments from last night, and I think this subsequent motion for an amendment is a good reminder that there's an incredible amount of ideas in our community to achieve these goals, ideas that we haven't heard yet, and a good reminder that we don't lack the will to do this in our community. So in the next 30 years, we'll continue to look to the community for ideas and to implement them.
Any other discussion in regards to the amendment? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Beaton?
Aye.
Berge?
Aye.
Christopherson?
Aye.
Emmanuel?
Aye.
Greigert?
Aye.
Lohr?
Aye.
Weld?
Aye.
Anderson?
Aye.
And that amendment passes. Back to the original resolution. Is there any other additional discussion? I would just like to extend my appreciation to the community, not only on behalf of myself and this council, but on behalf of my children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren. I mean, they are all going to be the benefactors of the work that's been done by amazing group of people, and very appreciative for the community effort and council members and staff and the time that they put into it. So, thank you. With that, if there's no other discussion, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Berge?
Aye.
Christopherson?
Aye.
Emmanuel?
Aye.
Greigert?
Aye.
Lohr?
Aye.
Weld?
Aye.
Anderson?
Aye.
Beaton?
Aye.
And that item passes unanimously. Agenda item number 21 is a resolution approving the Sustainability Advisory Committee's 2020 Annual Work Plan. Mr. Ivory.
Good afternoon. I'm subbing in for Ned this afternoon.
Welcome.
The ordinance that creates the Sustainability Advisory Committee requires the City Council to review their annual work program. This would be for 2020. That's included in your packet. Ned from the Community Development Department is the lead staff person for the committee, and he recently presented this to the committee, and they approved it at their last meeting. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to be here today, but you can see from the work program that he's the point person on over 90% of the projects that are listed for this year. He really puts his heart and soul into the sustainability, and I have to give him credit for that. He would have had a fancy presentation this afternoon. It's probably sitting on his computer that I don't have access to. In talking with Ned, though, most of the action items that are in the work program relate to the Renewable Energy Action Plan that you just approved. And then also included in your packet is a progress report from the 2019 work program from the committee. Listed in that report, or you can indicate or see that there are a lot of things that the committee did last year, and they had a very busy year. I'll try to answer any questions regarding the 2020 work plan. Also, as was mentioned, Patrick Ritchie is here, the intern that worked with Ned. He was very active with the REAP plan, and he does attend quite a few of the sustainability committee meetings. So with that, I'll try to answer some of your questions. If we can't answer your questions, this could be postponed for 2 weeks without any problem.
Certainly. Thank you. Does council have any questions for Mr. Ivory? I don't see any. Looks like we're all good.
All right, good.
Thank you very much. So then on a motion by Councilmember Christopherson and seconded by Councilmember Gregor, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Christopherson.
Aye.
Emmanuel.
Aye.
Gregert.
Aye.
Lohr.
Aye.
Weld.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Beaton.
Aye.
Bergy.
Aye.
And that item passes unanimously. Agenda item number 22 is a resolution supporting the proposed Eau Claire to Black River Falls to Tacoma Amtrak shuttle connection. Does council have any questions for Councilmember Gregor or Councilmember Anderson? Seeing none, then on a motion by Council Vice President Emmanuel and Councilmember Beaton, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Gregor.
Yeah, thank you, President Weld. I won't really speak too much more as I had an introduction yesterday. Just one thing I noticed, just hearing more input from folks about the idea of connecting a shuttle to the existing rail service in Tacoma from Eau Claire, is that I've been hearing from people from around the state who want to come here by train and they want to connect using the Tacoma shuttle. If we were to get it, I think it would be used as a way to bring visitors here from Madison, Chicago, and Milwaukee area. So just kind of another exciting benefit to what this could lead to. So,
Thank you, Councilmember Gregor. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Council President. And I just want to add on to what Councilmember Gregor said. I've been contacted by folks outside of Eau Claire who would like to be able to come to Eau Claire and take the shuttle down to Chicago or Milwaukee. So there's also a sense that if this were to happen, it could be it kind of enhance our viability as a regional hub and as a regional transportation hub. So I think that's potentially really exciting.
Thank you, Councilmember Anderson. Councilmember Christopherson.
Thank you. I think, too, this is another opportunity for us to look into the future of Eau Claire's economic development and how this really links us closely to the Twin Cities and increases our visibility as a hub. I'm just really grateful that this has caught some traction again and gives us an opportunity to really be supportive. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Emmanuel.
Aye.
Gregert.
aye.
Lohr.
Aye.
Weld.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Beaton.
Aye.
Bergy.
Aye.
Christopherson.
Aye.
And that item passes unanimously. We'll move on to ordinance. Ordinances for introduction, and we have one, an ordinance rezoning a property located at 3801 Gateway Drive from TC3 to C3P, and to adopt a general development plan with site plan for a commercial building. Does council wish to suspend the rules and take up this ordinance this evening? Seeing none, we will move on to announcements.
Thank you, Council President. Just a reminder that there is Just a reminder that there is a work session following the council meeting to discuss the recruitment for the next city manager. On March 19th, that's a Thursday, from 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock is the DECI Downtown Eau Claire Awards. So just let folks know that that's going on. And then also on
Friday, March 20th at 7 o'clock in the morning is Eggs and Issues. So if folks are interested in attending, please let Ms. Marole know, and she'll get that taken care of. And then one last item is we have a retirement here in the building from one of those, I guess, unsung heroes, if you will, that really do a great job of taking care of all of us and making sure our meetings come off smoothly. Tom, would you stand up? So Tom Toski started with the city of Eau Claire in April of 2007 as a seasonal laborer within the Public Works Streets Maintenance Division. It didn't take long before Tom was appointed as a full-time employee on July 19th of 2007 and became a custodian working the second and third shifts. So he's been working as a custodian, maintaining City Hall along with other city facilities for these past several years. And he's the primary contact person for us in making sure that our meeting rooms are set up and ready to go, both for boards and commissions as well as the city council. So just wanted to take a moment tonight to thank Tom for his service to the citizens of Eau Claire and wish him a happy and healthy and long retirement.
I'd like to make a comment, if I could.
Certainly. Councilmember Christopherson.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you, Tom. There's such a complex way of creating the livable, lovable city that we enjoy, and the hospitality that comes from someone who enjoys their work, does it humbly, greets people, and really makes connections. That's more than a job, and thank you so much for all the work you've done.
Thank you. I'd like to thank everyone here. I consider you my family. You know, it's going to be tough to leave here. It really will. And it's been a pleasure to really serve you. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom. Congratulations. Any other announcements? Council Vice President Emmanuel.
Thank you, Council President Wald. I'd also like to just echo what Councilmember Christopherson shared and publicly acknowledge you, Tom. I don't think I've shared this with you, but I've found you to be a comfort after, at times, exhausting decisions and conversations that are normal part of service and public life, and so not an exception to Eau Claire. I always found you to be just a spot of happiness and joy, and you really have brought comfort and care to my public service. So thank you for all that you have done.
Thank you.
Any other announcements from council? Seeing none, if there is no objection, we are adjourned.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and the City of Eau Claire. A transcript of this meeting is available for the hearing impaired. It will be available within 7 days of this telecast. Call 715-839-4912 or TDD 715-839-1689. Or write Eau Claire City Clerk, P.O. Box 5148, Eau Claire, Wisconsin 54702-5148. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839